Chapter 924. Ling Han exited the garden and saw Xiang Chengyun waiting at the entrance. When it was Ling Han's turn, a cold glint involuntarily appeared in his eyes, but before he could speak, he suddenly shivered and looked like he was listening attentively. Yes, he hurriedly said to the air, and turned to enter the garden. Obviously, he had been summoned by the left minister. Ling Han couldn't help but shake his head. Actually, Xiang Chengyun could be considered a genius. He had investigated, and Xiang Chengyun's results in the academy were quite impressive, using only 700 years to reach the high extreme of the mountain river tier. However, he had left the academy himself and followed the left minister. With the backing of the left minister, indeed, even elites of the sun-moon tier would not dare to put on airs in front of Xiang Chengyun now, and he did indeed look impressive. But in front of the left minister, he was like a dog, not daring to move back when told to. Was there any meaning to such a life? Ling Han definitely could not do it. The most important thing for cultivators is still to cultivate themselves. Taking advantage of others is ultimately not the right path. Ling Han thought, and did not have any thoughts of persuading Xiang Chengyun. This path was chosen by him, so what need was there for others to interfere? He returned to the academy, and focused on cultivating his 6 techniques as one. After a moment of enlightenment in the left minister's residence, he had improved greatly on this path, and was confident that he could increase his power to the limit of 20 stars within half a year. Another day later, a shocking piece of news broke out in the academy. Ling Han and Shui Yinyu had privately pledged to marry each other, and had already become husband and wife. When the news spread, it could be said that the whole academy was in an uproar. Most people still did not know who Ling Han was. Only a very few people knew that he was the first in this year's recruitment of the Northern Institution, having passed 8 levels, and had a chance to become a 4-star genius in the future. However, Shui Yinyu was definitely a celebrity. First of all, she was one of the twin beauties of the imperial capital 20 years ago, but after entering the academy, she was replaced by someone else. After all, the immortal realm did not lack beauties. But if all the beauties of the last 10,000 years were listed and ranked, Shui Yinyu could definitely enter the top 3, and even obtaining first place would not be surprising. Beautiful as a fairy, beautiful as a peach. This was a beauty that even ascetic monks would be moved by. Otherwise, how could Zhao Luan make a sound and confirm that she was the future matriarch of the Zhao clan? That's right, the reason Shui Yinyu's reputation had become even greater was because of Zhao Luan, the son of the great General Zhao, and a genius who was ranked highly in the academy's history. Everyone knew that Shui Yinyu was his exclusive property. Yet now, someone actually dared to snatch her away. Who was this? He was too daring. Then, all of Ling Han's information was dug out. The top student of this year's Northern Institution's recruitment. He passed the 8th tower. He knew how to refine pills. He came from a small world. The one who opened the skies, the Emperor Lord. The last piece of information was extremely shocking, because in the eyes of the majority, splitting open the skies was only a legend. Even in the immortal realm, there were very few who could reach 20 stars of shattering void tier. As for a small world, it was no longer possible to reach 15 stars. Even with the boost from power of the nation, it was still impossible for them to break through the threshold of 20 stars. How to split open the sky? Not simple. He could reach battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, even after coming out from a small world. No wonder he could pass through the 8 towers and be ranked among the top geniuses. But in front of the Zhao clan, all of this was fake. Ling Han had only thrown his lot in with the left minister. Unless he was the left minister's own son, what right did he have to fight over a woman with the son of the great General Zhao? A great many people were waiting to see how Ling Han would wrap things up. This Zhao Luan had publicly announced that once he graduated from the academy, he would marry Shui Yinyu, and this had also been approved by the Shui clan. Blockhead, blockhead. Li Weiwei ran over excitedly. You're really engaged to big sister Shui? Ling Han glanced at her. Wasn't this all because of her? He said calmly, so what if I am? You don't want to come out? You are not extremely handsome, and you don't know how to make women happy. What right do you have to make big sister Shui fall in love with you? Li Weiwei propped up her chin, appearing very puzzled. Even my servant girl doesn't have sex with you. Strange, could it be that big sister Shui has been bewitched? Ling Han's face was filled with black lines. This fourth young miss words were really hurtful. Though you were the daughter of the left minister, and not many people would dare to fall out with you if you said that, but with such low emotional intelligence, how many people would treat you sincerely? However, you're going to be in trouble. That guy Zhao Luan is not only a genius in martial art, he also has 3 followers. All of them are geniuses among geniuses. With a casual command, there would be lackeys who would. She made a gesture of cutting her throat. The next day, your corpse would be lying on the streets. Ling Han sighed and said, "Can't you say something nice? Beg me." Li Weiwei placed her hands on her hips. Though Zhao Luan is very powerful, I am not afraid of him. If you beg me to be happy, it's not like I can't protect you. Then forget it. I have no interest in being a servant. Ling Han refused resolutely. Li Weiwei was instantly infuriated. Did this stupid blockhead know that even she had to go through a mental struggle to become enemies with Zhao Luan? The strength of this Zhao clan was not the slightest bit inferior to that of the left minister's residence. Furthermore, when one had reached their level, the attitude of the younger generation would not only represent the younger generation. If news of the left minister and great general Zhao being on bad terms were spread, wouldn't that be a chance for the right minister to deal a blow? This stupid blockhead actually refused so quickly, betraying her good intentions. She was really going to die of anger. Humph, who cares if you live or die? Her temper flared up, and she immediately ran off. Ling Han's expression was calm. From the moment he agreed to Shui Yenyu's request, he had already expected what would happen. However, he believed that even Zhao Luan would not dare to commit a crime openly in the academy. Some rules had to be followed. After all, the Zhao clan was only a general of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, and not the emperor. Different situations call for different measures, so what was there to be afraid of? Oh, Yenyu really admitted it herself. Under a waterfall, a young man was currently standing with his hands behind his back. Behind him were the images of 3 mountains and rivers. He was shockingly in the high extreme of the mountain-river tier. If one looked closely, his mountains and rivers were different from the clear mountains and green waters of ordinary people. Instead, there were flashes of crimson light flickering, exuding a terrifying aura. Yes, young master. A young man half knelt behind him. His expression was respectful and fanatical, as if the person in front of him was a god. This young man standing with his hands behind his back was precisely Zhao Luan, and the half-kneeling young man was one of his followers. His name was Wuxia. He was currently reporting to Zhao Luan that Shui Yenyu and Ling Han had secretly pledged to marry each other. He was very angry. Shui Yenyu could be taken by their young master, and that was the good fortune that she had accumulated over several lifetimes. However, not only was she cold and indifferent to the young master, she had now actually made a cuckold of the young master. She practically deserved to die 100 times. Zhao Luan laughed loudly, shook his head and said, "What nonsense. I gave her too much freedom." "Oh right, what's that person's name?" "Ling Han." Zuoxiao hurriedly said. "Send someone to deliver this to him. If he is willing to accept it obediently, then spare his life." Zhao Luan casually tossed out an item from his spatial spirit tool. Zuoxiao's eyes swept over it, and he couldn't help but smile coldly. He said, "As you command, young master." Chapter 925. Ling Han, come out. Ling Han was cultivating when he heard a cold shout. He came to the courtyard, opened the door, and saw 2 youngsters standing outside. They were both in the shattering void tier, but he didn't recognize either of them. It was not someone who had entered the northern institution this term, but someone from the previous term, or possibly the term before that. "What can I do for you?" Ling Han didn't bat an eyelid, although he had already guessed it. That's senior apprentice brother Wang Wan. There's also senior Zhang Qing. They are all senior brother Zhao Luan's subordinates. Bah, they are not worthy. They are the subordinates of senior brother Zhao Luan's 3 followers. However, for them to appear at this time, they must represent senior brother Zhao. Of course, he actually dared to snatch senior brother Zhao's woman. It would be strange if senior brother Zhao didn't react. One courtyard door after another opened and people appeared. Many of them even had cold smiles on their faces, as if they were rejoicing in the misfortune of others. This was natural. Not only was Ling Han the first place of this batch, he had actually managed to seduce senior sister Shui Yenyu. She was an unparalleled beauty, and who wouldn't be envious? When Ling Han heard this, he gave an "oh" internally. He knew that Zhao Luan would definitely make a move, but the latter obviously didn't take him seriously, and only sent 2 shattering void tier elites here. Are you going to use force? Wang Wan, on the other hand, laughed coldly. This fellow from a small world really didn't know his place. Did he think that just because he split open the heavens, he had the qualifications to do as he pleased in the immortal realm? Today she would teach him a lesson. We have come under the orders of senior brother Zhao Luan to deliver a gift, he said. When the surrounding people heard this, they were all puzzled. What was wrong with Zhao Luan's brain? He had already snatched his woman, yet he still wanted to give something to him? Ling Han was calm and said, "Oh, what gift?" Wang Wan and Zhang Qing looked at each other. Then Wang Wan took out a brocade box from her spatial spirit tool. It was beautifully packaged, but it was not big. He held the box in his hand and said, "Why aren't you kneeling and receiving it? Kneel down." Ling Han laughed out loud. "What's wrong with you? Senior apprentice brother Zhao's gift. Do you dare not kneel and accept it?" asked Zhang Qing. Ling Han waved his hand and said, "Since that's the case, then take this gift back. I can't accept it." Wang Wan snorted and said, "There's no reason to take back a gift that senior brother Zhao has given. All right, it's up to you if you don't want to kneel and accept it. Take it." He nodded at Zhang Qing. Zhang Qing understood and began to open the brocade box. Everyone was curious as to what kind of gift Zhao Luan would give to Ling Han. They didn't think that Zhao Luan was a person who was easy to talk to. On the contrary, this genius was arrogant and overbearing, and he was famous for being tyrannical. The silk cloth on the outside of the box was untied. Under everyone's gaze, Zhang Qing opened the box, revealing the item inside. Instantly, the whole place fell silent. Inside the brocade box was a dog collar. Zhao Luan wanted to treat Ling Han like a dog, keeping him by his side and ordering him around. So contemptuous, so humiliating. In my eyes, you're only a dog. Ling Han, senior brother Zhao, has said that if you accept this gift, he'll spare your life, Wang Wan said with a smile, his face filled with arrogance. Shua, everyone's eyes instantly focused on Ling Han. If he accepted this gift, then he would be Zhao Luan's servant and lackey, but if he didn't accept it, then only death awaited him. Who would dare take Zhao Luan's words as a joke? Unless Ling Han's entire life was hidden in the academy, wouldn't it be easy for the son of the great General Zhao to kill a shattering void tier elite? What to do? Regardless of whether he accepted this gift or not, Ling Han was done for. It couldn't be helped. From the moment Ling Han and Shui Yenyu got together, his fate was already sealed. A flash of fury flickered in Ling Han's eyes, but his expression was terrifyingly calm. Holding the dog collar, he strode over. Was he going to accept it? True, compared to his life, what was dignity? Moreover, becoming Zhao Luan's dog was something many people wished for. But Zhao Luan wouldn't do it at all. Meanwhile, Wang Wan and Zhang Qing's lips curled up, showing expressions that they had expected this. Who wasn't afraid of death? Ling Han reached out, grabbed the dog collar, and then suddenly exploded with power. This dog collar was instantly broken by him. He casually tossed it onto the ground and calmly said, "Tell Zhao Luan that I appreciate his kindness, but do not have the fortune to enjoy it." The dog collar was tossed onto the ground, and a crisp sound of impact rang out. The whole place once again became deathly silent. Ling Han was going to oppose Zhao Luan now. Where did his courage come from? And where did his confidence come from? Oh, Zhao Luan, the only son of the great General Zhao, an elite in the high extreme of the mountain river tier, and was rumored to be a 3-star genius himself. What right do you have to oppose him? Impudent, you actually dare to damage senior brother Zhao's gift. Do you know what great crime you've committed? Wang Wan shouted harshly. Ling Han's eyes were cold and he said, "Using such a thing to humiliate me, could it be that I'm not going to smash it? The two of you get lost immediately. Don't make me feel annoyed. You are already a dead man, and still dare to be arrogant," Wang Wan said coldly. Ling Han stretched out a hand, and picked him up in a single move. With his present abilities, those with battle prowess below 20 stars were naturally no match for him. He gripped Wang Wan's neck and coldly said, "Since I am already a dead man, I don't mind dragging a few people to die with me." Wang Wan was instantly so frightened that all the hair on his body stood on end. He did not have the slightest intention of sacrificing his life for Zhao Luan. There was no enmity between him and Ling Han, so if he died, wouldn't it be a great loss? "No, no, no, don't kill me," he said in a trembling voice. The coward Ling Han casually tossed Wang Wan out. The academy allowed spars, but it definitely did not allow death or disability. Ling Han had never felt that he was a dead man, so he naturally would not throw his life away for a minor character. "Get lost," he shouted. Wang Wan and Zhang Qing hurriedly fled with their tails between their legs. They were not weak, but in the shattering void tier, how could there be anyone that was a match for Ling Han? "You guys have forgotten one more thing." Ling Han raised his foot and he kicked the damaged dog collar over. Wang Wan grabbed the collar with a flip of his hand, not daring to pause for even a moment as he fled with his tail between his legs. Everyone watched on, feeling that though Ling Han had been domineering for once, what would happen next? Though the academy had a rule that high-level students could not make a move against low-level students, it was impossible for Ling Han to remain in the shattering void tier forever. Once he advanced into the low extreme of the mountain river tier, then those at the peak of the low extreme would be able to forcefully challenge him. You were a 4-star genius, yes, but the academy similarly did not lack 3-star geniuses and 2-star geniuses. They could still teach you a lesson that would make you wish you were dead. Furthermore, could you stay in the academy forever? Everyone shook their heads. Obviously, Ling Han did not have much time left. Luo clan residence. Luo Hongdao summoned Luo Ba over and asked, "Have you finished refining the blood tier stone?" "Yes, Lord Patriarch." Luo Ba was brimming with confidence. His current battle prowess had reached 21 stars, causing him to feel a strong sense of expansion. That lowly commoner has become Zhao Luan's sworn enemy, and he is destined to die soon, Luo Hongdao said. "You should immediately go and challenge that lowly commoner. Otherwise, if he dies at Zhao Luan's hands, you won't have the chance to wash away your humiliation. Furthermore, if you help Zhao Luan kill that lowly commoner, we might be able to climb up the tree that is Great General Zhao." "Yes, Lord Patriarch." Luo Ba sneered. He couldn't wait to kill Ling Han. Chapter 926. On the second day after Zhao Luan delivered his gift, Luo Ba issued a duel invitation, wanting to have a duel to the death with Ling Han. It wasn't a normal spar, but a duel to the death. In the Scarlet Heaven Academy, if both sides had the same level of martial art, such as the low extreme of the Mountain River tier or the Shattering Void tier, then they could spar at any time, anywhere. As long as one side wanted to fight, there was no need for the other side's consent. However, such a spar couldn't result in death or disability, or the academy would investigate. Thus, if a duel to the death was to be carried out, then a public duel must first be arranged, and the other side's consent could be obtained before it could begin. In this way, no matter what the final result was, neither side would have to be responsible. However, after so many years, the number of duels to the death was pitifully low. A duel to the death, everyone in the academy was shocked. Although few could afford to challenge a cultivator from a small world, Ling Han was different. He was an emperor that had come from opening the sky, which meant that his strength was strong enough to reach 20 stars. And Luo Ba should be more aware of the gap in strength between him and Ling Han. At that time, he had been slapped twice by the latter, and he didn't have the slightest temper, but now he proposed a duel to the death with Ling Han. What was wrong with him? Could it be that Luo Ba's strength had greatly improved, and he believed that he could defeat Ling Han? Now that Luo Ba had made his move, it was up to Ling Han to accept it. Ling Han's answer was very straightforward. He'd fight if he paid. The appearance fee was 10 true origin stones, and if he won, he'd have to pay another 100 true origin stones. He would sign the agreement first before fighting. As expected, this guy hadn't changed at all. After knowing Ling Han's answer, everyone felt it was funny. He obviously had a strong opponent like Zhao Luan, yet he was still unaffected. What was this guy's brain made of? It was too thick, wasn't it? This time Luo Ba also responded very quickly, and agreed to Ling Han's condition. Both sides agreed to fight 3 days later. Ling Han could be sure that Luo Ba's strength had definitely improved greatly, which was why he would fight him to the death. Otherwise, it was impossible that he would give away true origin stones in his life. How could there be such a good person in the world? But he was unafraid. Aside from him, no one knew what level his battle prowess had reached. Strength 17 stars, battle prowess 25 stars in the Shattering Void tier. A single star was akin to heaven and earth, and from 20 stars onwards the increase of battle prowess became incomparably difficult, which also meant that with every increase of 1 star, the gap in battle prowess was also incomparably huge. Luo Ba was able to not only charge up to 20 stars of battle prowess in a short few days, but had even surpassed 5 stars. Who would believe that? Ling Han's life did not change at all. He was very curious about the white-haired old man in the library. He had asked people before, but no one could tell him the origin of the old man Su. They only knew that he had been in the library for a long time, and every time he looked like he was about to die, but he did not die. It was very strange. When he arrived at the library, he saw that old man Su was still dozing off just like last time. He bowed and said, "Greetings, senior." Old man Su raised his head and glanced at him. His eyes suddenly shone brightly, but then they dimmed again. He coughed and said, "Young man, you've mastered the 6 laws return to 1? Ling Han was shocked and blurted out, "How did senior know?" "Ho ho, if that were not the case, how could your power possibly have increased so much in a short month?" Old man Su retorted. Could this old man determine his specific power? Ling Han nodded and said, "Senior's judgment is indeed brilliant. Junior is impressed." Old man Su chuckled and said, "However, Junior, your situation is not very good." Ling Han also smiled and said, "No matter, Junior should still be able to hold on." Old man Su stared at Ling Han, and only after a long while did he say, "This old man has a technique that can't be considered very powerful. Are you interested in learning it?" This old man was definitely an elite. If he said that it wasn't very powerful, then he was definitely being modest. Ling Han hurriedly said, "Please enlighten me, senior." Old man Su closed his eyes as if he was taking a nap. Just when Ling Han thought he was really going to fall asleep, he suddenly opened his mouth and said, "This secret technique is called the 7 Kills Subduing Soul Technique. Using the power of one's spirit to attack the opponent, it can cause the opponent to fall into a temporary state of paralysis. The stronger and more resilient your spirit is, the greater the effect it can have on the opponent." Ling Han was instantly pleasantly surprised. His spirit was very strong and resilient, but he didn't have any technique that could allow his spirit to display its effects. Under the effect of the reincarnation tea, his spirit was far stronger than an ordinary cultivator in the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, and he had also cultivated the 2nd layer of the indestructible Heaven Scroll, so his spirit was also becoming more resilient day by day. If he learned the 7 Kills Subduing Soul technique, then even Mountain River tier cultivators could be affected and paralyzed by him if they were caught off guard. And what was the greatest effect of this? The instant of paralysis, no matter how short, would definitely cause the opponent to fall into a state of unconsciousness, and he could then draw the opponent into the Black Tower. Once he entered the Black Tower, he could dominate everything. Say, how could Ling Han not be pleasantly surprised? "However, senior, I have no intention of taking you as my disciple," Ling Han said. Old man Su smiled and said, "It's just a technique that's not very pleasing to my eyes. Just take it as me teaching it to you because I find it pleasing to your eyes." "Thank you, senior," Ling Han said solemnly. He paused and then continued, "In the future, if there's anything I can do to help, I definitely won't refuse." Old man Su chuckled, nodded and said, "Perhaps there will really be a day when you can help me." Ling Han knew that there was no hatred without reason in this world, and there was no love without reason either. If it was said that old man Su had taught him the 7 Kills Subduing Soul technique because he cherished talent, Ling Han didn't really believe it. After all, he had only seen it twice. However, this secret technique sounded very suitable for him, and he couldn't bring himself to refuse. "Come here." Old man Su nodded at Ling Han. Ling Han walked over, and old man Su stretched out a finger. There was a ball of white light flickering on his fingertip, and he pressed it down on his forehead. This was a vital point. If old man Su had any killing intent, Then with a light press, Ling Han wouldn't even have the chance to hide in the Black Tower. His soul would directly be destroyed. Ling Han chose to believe. Thus he stood as steady as a mountain. Old Man Su's finger pressed down. Wang, instantly innumerable characters surged into Ling Han's mind. Every character was endlessly complicated and couldn't be expressed or explained with words. It was as if they were a part of the Tao of heaven and earth, a kind of regulation that could only be understood and couldn't be expressed in words. Ling Han sat down and couldn't help but fumble and probe. Every bit of progress he made, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. However, just as he was lost in thought, he felt a pat on his shoulder, and his thoughts were interrupted. He opened his eyes and saw Old Man Su smiling at him and saying, "You've already meditated for 3 days, so you should have an appointment today, right?" Ling Han was startled. 3 days had already passed, so why did it feel like only an instant had passed? He nodded and said, "Thank you, Senior. I'll come and visit another day." "Go." Old Man Su waved his hand. Chapter 927. Zhang Yufeng was naturally at the Heaven Sword Palace, while Chen Ruijing was exploring various places. He was a cultivator, so he needed to improve his abilities through battle. As for the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, she was currently living in seclusion in the Water Element Valley, a place that was about 1,500 kilometers away from here. He decided to immediately go and find the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. He could take his time overthrowing the 5 sects, but he had already let this wife of his for 10,000 years, so he didn't want to wait a moment longer. He exited the Hanlin Pavilion and was just about to set off when he saw a carriage blocking his path. He saw a woman in azure curtsying slightly from the carriage and saying, "Grandmaster Ling, my wife invites you." "Your wife?" Ling Han was surprised. "Who?" "Grandmaster Ling. Won't you know when you get on the carriage?" The woman in azure pursed her lips into a smile, revealing a beautiful and flirtatious expression. She was dressed like a maidservant, but even a maidservant possessed such a seductive charm. So what kind of seductive beauty would her master be? Any ordinary person would definitely be filled with endless fantasies, and gladly agree to board the carriage to see the true appearance of this madam. But how could Ling Han be in the mood to do so at this moment? He shook his head and said, "Then forget it." With a flick of his sleeves he swaggered off. "Hey, hey, hey!" The woman in azure hurriedly leaped down from the carriage, blocking Ling Han's path. Moreover, she stuck out her perky chest, almost knocking into Ling Han's body, forcing him to take a step back. If a woman became feisty, men really had to be careful. Otherwise, if her chest touched you, it would definitely be because you wanted to take advantage of her. That was definitely the case. "Grandmaster Ling, my madam is one of the most beautiful women in this world. Who knows how many talented people line up to see my madam, but that also depends on my madam's mood." The woman in azure was slightly proud and said, "Now that my madam has taken the initiative to invite you, you actually refuse? Aren't you afraid that my madam will be sad?" "What does that have to do with me?" Ling Han asked calmly. "Then I won't allow it," the woman in azure said. She stretched out a hand to grab Ling Han and said, "Grandmaster Ling, since you are not willing to obediently board the carriage, I can only force you to submit." Boom! A terrifying aura surged out of her body. She was actually an elite of the Sun-Moon tier. Ling Han was astonished. This mighty elite of the Sun-Moon tier could go anywhere. Yet she insisted on becoming someone's servant. However, he was naturally unafraid either. He clenched his fist and punched at her. Because he had cultivated the lightning sword technique and comprehended a sliver of the might of heavenly tribulation, his fist was not only extraordinarily fast, but it was also imbued with the might of lightning. Its destructive power was astonishing. Lightning flashed wildly. The woman in azure couldn't help but look astonished. However, it was already too late for her to withdraw her attack, and her slender hand just so happened to collide with Ling Han's fist. Pong! There was a heavy sound and the two of them both retreated. This woman was at the late stage of the Sun-Moon tier, and she wasn't a multi-star genius. Thus, her power was only equal to Ling Han's. However, Ling Han had imbued his fist with the power of heavenly tribulation. How astonishing was this destructive power! Instantly, the woman in azure's slender hand was drenched with blood. I never thought that Grandmaster Ling is actually an elite of cultivation. The woman in azure channeled her cultivation technique and stopped the bleeding. There was a hint of surprise on her face, but she didn't panic. However, since Madame has given an order, Grandmaster Ling should obediently cooperate. Her eyes widened and Wang two suns and moons appeared. However, they didn't exude a sliver of heat. Instead, they were filled with a gloomy coldness. Frost appeared in the surroundings and fell down. The suns and moons only looked like the suns and moons in the sky. Some people cultivated the power of ice, so the suns and moons were naturally incredibly cold, exuding a boundless power of cold. Outside of the suns and moons, Ling Han nodded internally. The level of cultivation here was indeed stronger than on the Joint Peace Planet. At least on the Joint Peace Planet, only Venerable Trinity could release the power of the Eternal River. The others could only use the power of the mountains, rivers, suns, moons, and stars. This kind of coldness almost froze Ling Han's blood, and even his body was about to be sealed in ice. However, if he wanted to defeat him, this was far from enough. His whole body exuded the light of lightning, and the lightning instantly blocked the power of ice a meter away from his body. Ice Seal Spear, the woman in azure exclaimed softly. Boundless cold air condensed, forming an ice spear that was 3 meters long. Then she suddenly pierced towards Ling Han. The cold wind swept out, transforming into countless ice blades. Ling Han pointed a finger, and a boundless sword intent manifested, carrying with it the power of lightning, and greeted the ice blades. Pa 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 pa, all the ice blades were shattered. Ling Han stood with his hands clasped behind his back, and said, "Is it enough?" The woman in azure shook the ice spear, and said, "Not enough." She once again attacked, the long spear unceasingly stabbing, and could even be used as a staff. Under the infusion of martial intent, multiple divine patterns appeared on the ice spear, interweaving to form a brilliant light. Ling Han humphed, and also unleashed his battle prowess. As his fists bombarded, they continuously smashed onto the ice spear. Ka-ka-ka. Cracks appeared on the ice spear, and after withstanding a heavy punch from Ling Han, it finally broke into pieces bit by bit. Meanwhile, the woman in azure's face was also deathly pale, and her hair was disheveled. There was not the slightest bit of alluring beauty left on her. She couldn't help but be stunned. Ling Han was only at the early stage of the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, yet he had forcefully defeated her head-on. His strength was far too astonishing. However, she refused to admit defeat. Instead, she retrieved a divine seal, and was about to slap it onto her body. "Qing Luo, that's enough." An enchanting voice traveled out from within the carriage. It was none other than the leader of the Treasure Forest Pavilion of Big Trade City, Lin Yuqi. A fragrant fragrance wafted through the air, and the carriage door had already opened. A beautiful woman with an impressive figure stood there, and just by standing there, one would be filled with endless fantasies. Moreover, it was clear that this woman was extremely adept at maximizing her charm. This wasn't a casual standing, but rather a slight tilt of her slender body, which completely highlighted the curves of her entire body. Truly, it wasn't the wine that intoxicated one, but the wine that intoxicated one. "Grandmaster Ling, I'm not some ferocious beast. Are you afraid that I'll eat you?" She giggled, and her voice was like the swaying of a flower. It was a seductive and enchanting sight. With her saying this, Ling Han naturally couldn't just walk away. He smiled and said, "May I know what advice you have for me, madam?" "Come into the carriage first," Lin Yuqi said with a seductive smile. Ling Han hesitated slightly, but still nodded and boarded the carriage. Lin Yuqi turned around and entered the carriage first. She was wearing a long red dress, which was well tailored and tightly wrapped around her perfect figure. As he stood behind her, he could clearly feel her willowy waist swaying gracefully. Moreover, her round and plump buttocks were also tightly wrapped in the fabric. With every step she took, a voluptuous buttocks would be completely outlined. Her peach-shaped bosom was so tempting that it could make one drool. Ling Han could be considered to have seen many beauties, and in terms of seduction, Empress Luanxing was more than 10 times more seductive than her. However, in terms of how to express her charm in the most provocative way, this woman was definitely the best. Even he didn't dare to do too much, fearing that he would become aroused. Reading on a cell phone was more refreshing. Chapter 928. Who would have thought that before the two main characters had even started fighting, someone else would appear out of nowhere? Hong! Luo Ba and Yi Chongyun exchanged a blow, and a dazzling light exploded from between them like the Big Bang of the universe, sweeping up a hurricane that swept out in all directions. This was a clash of battle prowess that surpassed 20 stars of shattering void tier, and finally stirred up a small wave in the immortal realm. Tung tung tung, the two of them retreated at the same time. Neither more nor less, both retreated 11 steps. With this blow, the two of them were actually evenly matched. What, Luo Ba has actually become so strong? That's Yi Chongyun of the East Institution, the number 1 in the Shattering Void tier. I heard that he reached 20 stars of Shattering Void tier a few years ago, but never broke through to the Mountain River tier. Obviously, he wants to go further in the Shattering Void tier. Who knows, his current battle prowess has already surpassed 20 stars. Everyone exclaimed in shock. Yi Chongyun's strength was within everyone's expectations. After all, he was the number 1 in the Shattering Void tier division of the East Institution, and was one of the young elites of the imperial capital over 40 years ago, just like Luo Ba of this batch. But after cultivating for 40 more years, he actually couldn't suppress Luo Ba. Too shocking. No wonder Luo Ba dared to issue a deathmatch challenge to Ling Han. His strength had actually increased a few times, no more than a dozen times in a short few days. Haha, as expected, battle prowess of 21 stars of Shattering Void tier. Yi Chongyun laughed loudly, and immediately shot out again, blasting towards Luo Ba. Pung pung. The two of them exchanged another 2 blows, and still couldn't decide the victor. Is that enough? Luo Ba asked coldly. His target was Ling Han. That's 3 moves already, Yi Chongyun said, still not fully satisfied. Alright, when you're done we can still spar again. He felt that he had encountered a bottleneck. He was invincible in the Shattering Void tier, and could no longer improve. But Luo Ba actually reached battle prowess of 21 stars of Shattering Void tier, giving him a glimmer of hope. If he continued to battle with Yi Chongyun, maybe he could break through the shackles. Though Luo Ba was extremely displeased, he also knew that Yi Chongyun was a strong opponent, and the two of them might have to fight for a few days and nights before a victor could be decided. Now where would they have the time to waste? He could not wait to defeat and kill Ling Han. He walked quickly to the square halfway up the mountain. Looking at Ling Han, who was resting with his eyes closed, he sneered, I really didn't expect you to dare accept my challenge. If it had not been for the battle with Yi Chongyun previously, everyone would definitely say that Luo Ba was boasting shamelessly. He was an emperor that had come from splitting open the skies, so he definitely had battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier. If he still had the supportive power of the nation, breaking through to 20 stars would be a piece of cake. But now, everyone knew that Luo Ba's strength had reached 21 stars of Shattering Void tier. Even if this strength wasn't his own and was obtained from refining a blood tier stone, it didn't change the fact that he was extremely formidable now. Does Ling Han still dare to accept the challenge? A life and death battle did not necessarily have to determine life and death. It was entirely possible to give up midway. Life and death battle meant that if life and death were to be determined, the other party would not have to take any responsibility at all. Ling Han was pondering the profound mysteries of the 7 kills subduing soul technique. In the eyes of others, Luo Ba was so powerful that he could not even resist, but in his eyes, so what if he had battle prowess of 21 stars? He could kill him with a casual slap, so he needed to pay attention to him. His thoughts were interrupted, so he was naturally not in a good mood, which was immediately apparent on his face. The others didn't know, and thought that Ling Han was afraid. They all nodded internally, thinking that he might not be able to fight this battle. Ling Han stretched out his hand and asked, "Where's my appearance fee?" Pooh! Instantly a great many people spluttered. You really wanted money so badly. Didn't you see how powerful Luo Ba was? Yet Luo Ba laughed loudly, and casually tossed out 10 true origin stones. He said coldly, "This will be used to make arrangements for your funeral." Sigh. After extorting 2,000 true origin stones from the Luo clan, these mere 10 true origin stones seemed to have lost their appeal all of a sudden. However, no matter how small an ant's leg was, it was still meat. It would be a waste if he didn't take it. One could never have too much money. Ling Han put away the true origin stones and said, "There's still 100. You can still win against me?" Luo Ba was instantly angered. Ling Han snickered and said, "Rules are rules. What's with all this nonsense? Are you going to fight or not? If not, I'm going home to sleep." "Fight!" Luo Ba gritted his teeth, and with another wave of his hand, took out 100 true origin stones. This time Ling Han didn't collect them. After all, he hadn't won yet. However, this was only a matter of time. "Can we fight now?" Luo Ba asked darkly, killing intent boiling in his heart. "You can talk all you want now, but you'll be in trouble later." In the academy, there were also a few important figures present to spectate, but they stood far away. For example, Luo Kaifeng. A junior from his clan was fighting a battle to the death, so he naturally had to pay attention. There was also Zhang Deman. He had a good impression of Ling Han, and wanted to take him in as a disciple. The other was Wei Qianshu. Ever since he had been dragged into the battle by Luo Kaifeng last time, he had also become interested in Ling Han. Battles to the death were already very rare, not to mention that both sides of the battle possessed peak battle prowess. There were many spectators, and the students from the Shattering Void Tier division of the North Institution were the most numerous. There were also some people from the other 3 institutions, but the total number was still less than that of the North Institution. "Fight, why do you have so much nonsense to say? Are you afraid of death?" Ling Han said with a smile. Luo Ba was almost angered to death. "It's obviously you who's spouting so much nonsense, all right?" However, the battle had finally begun. Haha, he would slowly torture Ling Han, and let him suffer in agony. He actually dared to slap him. Xiao he pounced and struck out with a palm. The image of the divine beast Dijiang appeared again, which had a great deterrent force. Ling Han placed his left hand behind his back, and stood very casually. When Luo Ba pounced close, he waved a palm at the latter. Multiple divine patterns intertwined, forming an incredibly complicated pattern. Earth overturning Sealpeng. The palm struck out, and Luo Ba was sent flying without any suspense. Then, his body disintegrated in midair, splitting into pieces as a rain of blood splattered everywhere. His corpse fell to the ground, his expression full of disbelief, as if he was wondering how he had been killed with a single slap when he obviously already had battle prowess of 21 stars of Shattering Void Tier. This did not make sense, nor did it make sense. All around there was dead silence, and only the whistling of the mountain wind could be heard. Who would have thought that the previously awe-inspiring Luo Ba would actually be killed with a single slap? This was really a fuck you elite of 21 stars of Shattering Void Tier and not a fly. No, Luo Ba was definitely not a fly. On the contrary, he was extremely strong, and was evenly matched with Yi Chengyun after exchanging 3 blows. This was enough to prove his strength. Everyone felt their scalps go numb. That meant that Ling Han was even more powerful. What kind of battle prowess was this? 22 stars? From 20 stars and above, how strong could one become with every increase in battle prowess of 1 star? Actually, everyone had no idea because this only existed in theory and legend, so how could it be measured in reality? The corner of Yi Chengyun's mouth twitched, and his whole body was covered in cold sweat. Ling Han's strength made him not even have the courage to challenge him. Chapter 929. I knew it. In the distance, Li Weiwei waved her fist excitedly. She guessed that Ling Han's battle prowess had possibly reached 23 stars of Shattering Void Tier, so with an advantage of 2 stars, he would definitely be able to easily crush his opponent. Ji Yun-er's face was also filled with shock. Before she came, her battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void Tier was already invincible in this cultivation level. 21 stars was practically like a dream, but today not only had 2 of them appeared, one of them had even been directly killed with a single palm strike. Could it be that Ling Han was actually in the mountain river tier? Bar Luo Kaifeng rushed out like a gust of wind. His face was ferocious, as if he wanted to eat someone. Luo Ba was the strongest prodigy of the Luo clan in the last 100 years, and that was why the clan had spent a great deal of effort to obtain a blood tier stone for him to refine. This was something that could be used to a certain extent even in the Mountain River tier or the Sun Moon tier. But now he was swatted to death like a fly. How could he accept this? His eyes were scarlet red, and he shouted, "Audacious thief, you actually dare to commit murder in the academy. This seat will suppress and kill you." He brazenly attacked, one hand opened and slapped towards Ling Han. When a Sun Moon tier cultivator attacked, even if he was only at the low extreme, how terrifying would his might be? If Ling Han was struck, he would definitely be smashed into pieces. How could a physique on the level of level 1 godly metal withstand the attack of a great elite of the Sun Moon tier? Too shameless. Li Weiwei stomped her foot in the distance, but she was too far away to stop him. Ji Yun'er also frowned slightly, but consoled, "Don't worry, the elites of the academy will not let him do as he pleases." That's right. When Luo Kaifeng attacked, Zhang Deman and Wei Qianshu also attacked at the same time, blocking him and saying, "Brother Luo, please control yourself." The two of them joined forces and easily blocked Luo Kaifeng's attack. Ling Han's expression was calm, without a hint of nervousness. This was the academy. If Luo Kaifeng was allowed to have his way, it would really be a joke. There were definitely still elites at the high extreme of the day-night tier, or even consummate level, spying on the academy from the shadows. They could attack at any moment. It was just that there was no need for them to show themselves just then. He picked up the true essence stones on the ground. These were the stakes he had won. It was a pity that Luo Ba's corpse could not be taken away. There should be many good things in his spatial spirit tool. This kid killed someone from my Luo family. Are we just going to let him off? Luo Kaifeng sneered. He also knew that he couldn't kill Ling Han on the spot. He was just pretending to be furious in preparation for what he was about to say. An old fox like him might be impulsive, but he would immediately calm down. In that instant he had an idea. Zhang Deman snorted and said, "This is a life and death battle. Both sides have agreed to it. If they die, they can only blame themselves for being inferior." "You are mistaken." Luo Kaifeng shook his head and said solemnly, "Before this, I clearly heard Luo Ba say to stop and admit defeat, but that despicable brat did not care, and insisted on attacking. This is not in accordance with the rules of a battle to the death." Fuck. Hearing Luo Kaifeng's words, everyone cursed in their minds. They had seen shameless people before, but they had never seen such a shameless person. Was this person really an elite of the Sun Moon tier? How could he be so shameless? Luo Ba was insta-killed by Ling Han, so how could he have had time to admit defeat and surrender? Yet Luo Kaifeng did not care at all. At their level, would they still care about the opinions of others? If they were displeased, they could just kill them directly. "Why didn't I hear it?" Zhang Deman said in displeasure. "Then it can only be said that Brother Zhang's cultivation level is still a bit lacking," Luo Kaifeng said with a smile. He looked at Wei Qianshu, his eyes sinister. "Brother Wei must have heard it, right?" Wei Qianshu was startled. Luo Kaifeng's words were filled with threat. If he said no, that would be directly opposing the Luo clan. He himself was unafraid, but though he did not have any powerful background, and had practically relied on his own strength to cultivate to his current cultivation level, it did not mean that he did not have descendants. It was not like he did not know the Luo clan style of doing things. They were really capable of doing anything. Was conscience more important, or family more important? Was a cultivator from a small world more important, or was family more important? Wei Qianshu sighed internally, and said, "I seem to have heard Luo Ba admit defeat." He used the word seem, which could be considered as giving himself some leeway. Zhang Deman was instantly seething with anger. This was too shameless, but he was the same as Wei Qianshu. They were both lone cultivators, and did not have any party behind them to support them. He knew that if the Luo clan did not care about the cost, they could completely turn the truth upside down. "Luo Kaifeng, aren't you afraid that if you do too many guilty things, there will be ghosts knocking on your door in the middle of the night, and you won't be able to sleep?" he said darkly. We are cultivators, so what is there to be afraid of?" Luo Kaifeng said indifferently, and then turned to Wei Qianshu. "Brother Wei, this boy has violated the rules of the academy, and should be expelled, right?" When everyone heard this, they all felt that Luo Kaifeng was very ruthless. Without the protection of the Scarlet Heaven Academy, what was Ling Han? Any Mountain River tier cultivator could kill him. Ling Han did not bat an eyelid. Could the Luo clan cover the sky with one hand in the academy? Wei Qianshu, meanwhile, was in a very difficult position. This Luo Kaifeng not only dragged him into the water, but also wanted him to go all the way. But he had already gone against his will just now, and now there was no turning back. Otherwise, he would not be able to please both sides. He gritted his teeth and was just about to speak when he saw a white shadow flash by, and there was a large white cat on Ling Han's shoulder. There was nothing strange about cats. There were many people who raised demonic tigers in the imperial capital, such as the glazed flame green pattern tiger, ice plain tiger, and some could even reach the height of the mountain river tier. In comparison, the cat in front of them was only in the shattering void tier. But the problem was, everyone in the academy knew that there was a cat that could not be provoked. Luo Kaifeng was also startled. He naturally knew that the headmaster raised a cat, and spoiled it to no end. Whoever dared to touch this cat, he would destroy them. But this cat actually squatted on Ling Han's shoulder. What did this mean? Coincidentally or? He couldn't help but shiver. If there was a heavenly body tier elite supporting Ling Han, then the entire Luo family combined wouldn't be enough to be killed by a single finger of the other party. Meow. The large white cat swept a displeased glance at everyone. Don't you know that I'm hungry? Why aren't you letting Ling Han go home to prepare food for me? Ling Han smiled faintly and said, I was expelled from the academy, right? Large white cat, then you'll follow me from now on, and you'll have plenty of meat. Meow. The large white cat nodded proudly. Demonic beasts of the shattering void tier obviously developed intelligence, and it wasn't strange for them to have such a human-like reaction, but Luo Kaifeng and Wei Qianshu were so scared that their guts almost came out. If they let Ling Han abduct the large white cat, once the headmaster flew into a rage, who could stand up to him? Grandpa Cat, come here quickly, I also have delicious food here, Luo Kaifeng said hurriedly. Luo Kaifeng hurriedly said. Since Ling Han could use food to tempt this demon cat, why couldn't he? The large white cat flew into a sudden rage. Did he really think that it was a gluttonous cat? Did having milk make it a mother? If it weren't for the fact that Ling Han, this human, had lowered his stance enough and was sincere enough, with such a tsundere no proud existence, how would it agree to be friends with him? Who did you think you were? Chapter 930. Meow. The big white cat meowed and charged towards Luo Kaifeng. Its speed was very fast and it was almost unrivaled in the shattering void tier. But the opponent was in the Sun Moon tier, so he naturally couldn't pose any threat to Luo Kaifeng. However, the problem was that Luo Kaifeng dared not offend this cat demon, and only kept dodging. A Sun Moon tier elite was actually chased around by a shattering void tier elite. Probably only this cat demon could do that. After chasing for a while, the big white cat leaped back onto Ling Han's shoulder, proudly combing its whiskers and flashing its claws, looking like whoever dares to bully this king will take care of you. Zhang Deman couldn't help but laugh. Who would have thought that Ling Han would actually become friends with the big white cat that no one could afford to offend? He coughed, smiled and said, I still insist on my own opinion. Luo Ba didn't admit defeat, so Ling Han isn't at fault. If the two of you have no objections, let Ling Han go back. What else could Luo Kaifeng say? That was the dean's pet beast, and he was valued even more than his descendant. Even if the ancestor of the Luo family was here, he would have to admit defeat today. He snorted hatefully, picked up Luo Ba's dismembered corpse, put it into his spatial spirit tool, and leaped away, leaving directly. Wei Qianshu sighed again. This time he really didn't know what to do. He shook his head and also flew away. Thank you, senior, for speaking up for justice, Ling Han said sincerely to Zhang Deman with clasped hands. Zhang Deman laughed and said, even if I didn't make a move with this cat here, no one in the entire academy would dare to touch you. The big white cat proudly raised its head. This king was just that mighty. I still have to thank senior, Ling Han said. Zhang Deman nodded. This boy knew when to advance and retreat, abided by etiquette, and had a good temperament. Talent in martial art was one thing, but temperament was equally important. Otherwise, it would only be a disaster in the future. Go, he said with a smile. A dead student had to be dealt with, But this had nothing to do with Ling Han. Ling Han nodded, cupped his hands again and said, "This student will take his leave." He left with the big white cat. That fellow had already scratched his head more than once. Does it not know that this king is hungry? After Ling Han left, the spectators naturally dispersed as well. Now there was another big piece of news. Ling Han's battle prowess surpassed 21 stars of shattering void tier. Brother Yi. Mo Junren patted Yi Chengyun. Yi Chengyun was in a daze, his whole body drenched in cold sweat. He suddenly came back to his senses and said, "I kept thinking, if I were in Luo Ba's shoes, how would I block that palm? The result is death no matter what." Mo Junren couldn't help but laugh. "Big brother Yi, you can also choose not to fight with that freak." Yi Chengyun's eyes instantly lit up, and he said, "That's right. I have already cultivated to the end of the shattering void tier. With my talent, if there is no special opportunity, it would be impossible for me to advance further and break through to 22 stars of battle prowess. But if I break through to the mountain river tier, I will have room for improvement again." "That's right. That's why we use 100 years to break through to 20 stars of shattering void tier. Though this limit is very important, it is definitely not the most important," Mo Junren said. "Cultivating to the limit of the immortal level. That is true strength." Yi Chengyun breathed out a long sigh of relief, his confidence completely returning. He said, "Junren, you are the one with great wisdom that appears to be stupidity. Am I?" Mo Junren smiled. "I am only a dissolute person who likes to play with the flowers. At a certain place." Detestable old witch, let Nyo out. A strange wah-wah-wah sound rang out, and there was a thunderous knocking sound on the door. "Nyo wants to see Ling Han, ugly old woman, let Nyo out." Nyo's whole body was leaning against the door, her small hands grabbing onto the lintel like a monkey. "Nonsense." The old woman in cyan grabbed at empty air, and Nyo was immediately sucked over, unable to resist. Nyo is very angry. Nyo wants to become bad. Nyo doesn't want to cultivate anymore. Nyo puffed out her cheeks, her hands on her hips. "You little girl, ever since you returned to the Rock Palace, when have you cultivated seriously?" The old woman in cyan sighed. "Yun only infused the soul of martial art into your body, but how much you can refine and digest will still depend on your own efforts. Nyo just doesn't want to cultivate. Nyo wants to see Ling Han." Nyo wasn't going to be reasonable, nor was she afraid, and glared at the old woman. The old woman in cyan felt a headache coming on. The 3 supreme secret techniques of the Rock Palace could only be cultivated by the palace mistress, because only the palace mistress inherited the unique soul of martial art. Without this as a foundation, even if the secret technique was placed in front of you, it would be useless. How did she encounter such an unreliable heir? She had interacted with Nyo for more than a year, after all, and had a considerable understanding of this girl. She knew that being fierce was useless. This girl simply didn't know what fear was. "Fine, I promise you. As long as you cultivate to the Genesis tier, I will allow you to see that brat, but only for 3 days at most, and then you have to return. Our Rock Palace has a great enemy, and only if you cultivate the 3 great secret techniques can you resist. Sai, not letting you out is also for the sake of your safety." The old woman took a step back. Nyo counted with her fingers, and said, "Fine. Then Nyo will use 3 years to cultivate to the Genesis tier." She tilted her head to look at the old woman and said, "Damn old woman, hurry up and leave. If you stay here, Nyo will get angry when she sees you, and won't be in the mood to cultivate." The old woman in cyan couldn't help but shake her head. She was also an overlord-level figure, but she didn't have the slightest bit of temper towards Nyo, which could be considered as one thing restraining another. "Hurry up and leave, don't hinder Nyo's cultivation." Nyo waved her hand, her expression full of impatience. The old woman in cyan left helplessly, but Nyo was finally willing to cultivate properly, which made her breathe a sigh of relief. This little brat really gave her a headache. However, in that small world a genius actually appeared. There was nothing special about that human, but his son was a genius in martial art. If it were not for the fact that the Rock Palace didn't accept male disciples, she really didn't want to miss this opportunity. The Heaven Saint Palace is currently recruiting disciples, and has a good relationship with our Rock Palace. If we provide them with a genius heir, They will definitely be very grateful, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. She quickly made up her mind. The Luo clan. Luo Hongdao stared at Luo Ba's corpse, his hands clenched tightly, his eyes flickering with fury. The most outstanding heir of the younger generation of the Luo clan was killed just like that. Though nurturing a shattering void tier cultivator didn't need to pay a high price, the blood tier stone was really precious, and even thinking about it made his heart ache. We definitely can't spare that lowly commoner, he said hatefully. Lord Patriarch, that brat seems to have some relationship with Fu Hui, Luo Kaifeng said. When he spoke of Fu Hui's name, his body trembled slightly. The name of an elite of the heavenly body tier seemed to have some magical power. It was more refreshing to read on one's phone. Chapter 931. Miss Han is Madame's distant niece, the young servant girl said. She was very nosy, and she continued to talk about the relationship between Lin Yuqi and Han Xinyan. In any case, the 2 women were very close. Otherwise, Han Xinyan wouldn't have come to such a small city for no reason. After leading Ling Han to a courtyard, the young servant girl curtsied and said, Miss Han should be meditating inside, so I don't dare to disturb her. Young master, you should knock on the door yourself. After saying this, she turned around and left. How irresponsible. Ling Han knocked on the door, and only after a while did he hear the sound of footsteps. Creak. The door opened and a person who was almost completely naked walked in. It was Han Xinyan. Fuck, even she wanted to tempt him. Ah! Han Xinyan suddenly screamed. Pung! The door immediately closed. Ling Han rubbed his nose. He had almost been knocked into by the door. However, after a while, the door opened again and Han Xinyan stormed out. This time she was naturally wearing clothes, and she was holding a sword in her hand. She slashed at Ling Han and said, How dare you? Ling Han hurriedly dodged. This woman was indeed very talented in alchemy, but she didn't have the corresponding strength in cultivation. Ling Han merely released the power of heaven's might, and her body immediately went limp. How could she still have the strength to attack? Don't misunderstand, he said with a smile. I'm only here to teach you the refinement method of the Berserk Blood Spirit pill. Han Xinyan paused for a moment before slashing a few more times. Only then did she resentfully sheath her sword, and chided, Evil thief. Ling Han sighed and said, I didn't do anything to you, did I? I just knocked on the door normally, and it was you who ran out completely naked. Han Xinyan couldn't help but blush. She had a bad habit, and that was that she liked to strip naked when she was studying pill recipes. Only then would she be able to gain inspiration. Moreover, this was Lin Yuqi's inner courtyard, and there wasn't a single man here. Thus, she naturally wasn't afraid of exposing herself. However, who would have thought that a man would suddenly appear and strip her naked? How humiliating! She glared at Ling Han and said, You're never allowed to mention this matter again. She wasn't a rude and unreasonable person, and she knew that Ling Han wasn't in the wrong. However, she was naturally extremely displeased. Those with small breasts were also narrow-minded. Ling Han thought to himself, this woman was truly flat-chested. In truth, he wouldn't be able to see anything even if she stripped naked. If she only had breasts, she could completely pass herself off as a man. Fine, he said calmly. He was also afraid that she would latch onto him and say things like, if you strip me naked, I'll marry no one but you. He directly tossed a book over and said, This is the pill recipe for the Berserk Blood Spirit pill. Study it on your own for now. I still have some important matters to attend to, so I have to leave Big Trade City for a while. If there's anything you don't understand, you can write it down and ask me when I return. Han Xinyan was furious. We're both level 8 alchemists, yet you're acting like you want to guide me? Do you think I'm a junior? However, now that she had obtained the pill recipe for the Berserk Blood Spirit pill, she couldn't bring herself to fall out with Ling Han. Thus, she could only angrily put the pill recipe away. At this moment, she really didn't dare to stubbornly refuse. Ling Han waved his hand and left the Treasure Forest Pavilion. He then set out toward the border region between the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire and the Blue Cloud Imperial Empire. This was where the two-realm battlefield was located. There was a connection point between the Netherworld and the Immortal Realm here, and the netherworld could invade the immortal realm from this place. Conversely, the immortal realm could also enter the netherworld from this place. The cloud-piercing shuttle was no longer suitable for traveling between planets. Fortunately, Ling Han had already grasped the star-plucking step. Added with the lightning technique that he had learned from the heavenly tribulation, his current speed was astonishingly fast. A mere 12 days later, he arrived at the two-realm battlefield. However, before he set out, he first refined a berserk blood spirit pill. It took him 3 days to digest the medicinal effects of the pill, and the red sun inside his body also suddenly expanded, allowing him to advance into the middle stage of the low extreme. This kind of alchemical pill was called berserk, because its medicinal effects were indeed berserk. Even though Ling Han's physique had reached the level of level 6 godly metal, his skin and flesh were still lacerated by the impact of the pill. In fact, a few of his godly bones were even broken. It was no wonder that unless one was at the consummate level of the sun-moon tier, they could only consume this pill under the care of an elite. Otherwise, they would only be blasted to death by the berserk medicinal effects. If they died from consuming this pill, that would be far too unjust. And after consuming this pill, with Ling Han's penetrating ability as the Alchemy Emperor, he sensitively discovered that alchemical poison had been left in his body. If he consumed another berserk blood spirit pill, not only would it not be able to raise his cultivation level, but it would instead cause him to die from the poison. What kind of concept was a berserk blood spirit pill? It could raise the cultivation level of a sun-moon tier by a subminor level. If it exploded in an explosive manner, what kind of destruction would it cause? It could practically rival the full power strike of a low-level heavenly body tier elite. Which sun-moon tier could withstand this kind of toxicity? Ling Han was also at his wits' end. He observed the rate at which the alchemical poison was dissipating day after day, and came to a conclusion. This would probably take as long as 3 years. In other words, if he didn't have a special method to dispel the alchemical poison in his body, he would have to wait 3 years before he could consume a second berserk blood spirit pill. But when he thought about it again, that meant that he would only need 50 years at most to reach the peak stage of the sun-moon tier. What kind of terrifying speed was this? How long was the lifespan of a sun-moon tier elite? The consummate level was 4 million years. A whole 4 million years, yet he could only use 50 years to cultivate. Wasn't this terrifying? Wasn't this fast enough? Of course he couldn't compare to Hu Niu. The level of cultivation in the celestial realm was higher, and nurturing Genesis tiers was perhaps like nurturing shattering void tier cultivators in the immortal realm. Although it wasn't something that could be achieved with a wave of a hand, it probably wouldn't be that difficult either. On the side of the immortal realm in the two-realm battlefield, a bridgehead was built. This bridgehead was called Wolf-Fang City. The purpose of Wolf-Fang City's existence was to provide a resting place for the warriors battling against the netherworld. It was a safe haven, and at the same time it was also a stronghold. Once Wolf-Fang City fell, the army of the netherworld would march straight in and bring disaster to the entire Cloud Apex planet. There were only 2 imperial empires on the Cloud Apex planet, and they were the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire and the Blue Cloud Imperial Empire. Thus, the main forces here were naturally the armies of these 2 imperial empires. Additionally, all cultivators and demonic beasts that had reached the immortal level had a duty to join the two-realm battlefield. There were a few famous armies here, such as the Purple Moon Army under the command of the Purple Moon Divine Maiden, the Everlasting Wind Army under the command of the Wind Rider King, and the Arhat Army under the command of the Wide Travel Monk King. They had all established their reputation in the great battle against the beings of the netherworld. Upon coming to the two-realm battlefield, cultivators could freely choose. One was to join the official army and fight as a soldier. When they had accumulated enough merits, they could honorably retire. Secondly, they could also act independently and hunt down the beings of the netherworld. This would also allow them to accumulate merits. Merit points were the currency used in the two-realm battlefield. Although fighting against the netherworld's invasion was a righteous cause, they could not possibly make people shed blood just because of a few words. Therefore, the concept of merits came into being. One could use merits to exchange for various medicinal pills, divine equipment, or even martial arts. Once the total value of one's merits reached a certain level, one could choose to retire. It was mentioned earlier that joining the two-realm battlefield and fighting against the Netherworld's invasion was the duty of all divine-level cultivators. Everyone had to serve in this military service. If one were to exceed the time limit and fail to fulfill it, they would be beheaded if they were caught. Chapter 933. Shui Yinyu chased after Ling Han for a while, and had to admit that this was a very good idea. At least it could shut the Shui clan's mouth for now. Even if the Shui clan didn't mind sending her to the Zhao clan, how could Great General Zhao accept a daughter-in-law who was pregnant with someone else's seed? Ever since she had decided to pretend to be husband and wife with Ling Han, she had already come to some sort of understanding. However, understanding and habit were two different things. That was why she had chased after Ling Han in a rage out of humiliation, but soon she had no choice but to accept it. However, her anger hadn't dissipated, and she ignored Ling Han and left alone. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. She even pretended to be husband and wife, so what was the difference between having a child? Speaking of children, he couldn't help but miss his son. When they met again in the future, would his son still recognize him? Though he was very confident, merely climbing the mountain river tier would easily take over 1,000 years. And how long would it take to reach the heavenly body tier? Even if he was a genius and could shorten the time by 10 times, it would still take over 1,000 years or even tens of thousands of years. By that time, his son would be his grandfather's grandfather. There was no use worrying. The path of martial arts still had to be walked step by step. At least for now, he couldn't leave the chaotic star's majestic empire, so he could only accumulate strength as he thought of a way. However, the immortal realm was too big. First of all, the Rock Palace definitely wasn't on the Joint Peace Planet, so once it involved a journey on the level of the galaxy, it would be measured in years, as short as a few years, long as decades or even centuries. Moreover, his physical body definitely couldn't directly cross the galaxy. Even if he could control the regulations of the immortal realm and fly, it was useless. The speed was too slow, so he had to use a flight god tool, and a very high-level one that could withstand a long journey and withstand the sudden dangers in the galaxy. For example, meteorites, black holes, and turbulent flows of the galaxy. All of those could doom immortal-level elites eternally. Once he entered the galaxy, it definitely wasn't a joke. He had to be fully prepared. Ling Han shook his head. It was better to advance steadily and push his strength to 20 stars. After advancing into the immortal level, he could use alchemy to nurture his martial arts. Perhaps he could reproduce the miracle in the small world and reach the heavenly body tier in the shortest time possible. As long as he could reach the heavenly body tier, he could openly leave the chaotic star's majestic empire. How could such an elite still be a hostage? Ling Han suddenly felt a chill in his heart, and a strong sense of danger rose in him. His divine sense was too powerful, almost on par with the low extreme of the mountain river tier. Thus he naturally had a strong sense of danger. Shwa, a cold light flashed, shooting straight at his chest from the side of the roof, precisely where his heart was. It was a short black arrow that emitted a frightening cold light. At this moment, Ling Han had to make a decision. The might of this arrow should only be at the low extreme of the mountain river tier. He had exchanged blows with Shui Yinyu before, so he could deduce this. The problem was this arrow forged from high-level godly metal? Would it be able to pierce through his physique? His fist involuntarily tightened. Xiao, the arrow descended, and Ling Han's entire body was immediately sent flying. With a pong, he flipped a few times in the air, and then collapsed on the ground, blood immediately gushing out. A man in black jumped down from the roof. His figure was light, and he did not make the slightest sound. His face was actually covered with a piece of black cloth, and only a pair of bright eyes could be seen. Merely in the shattering void tier, have I been too careful? The man in black said to himself. He drew out a short saber and walked towards Ling Han, intending to cut off Ling Han's head. As an assassin, if he did not bring back the target's head, how could he prove that he had assassinated him? He came to Ling Han's side, grabbed the latter's hair, and lifted Ling Han up. Just as he was about to slash with the saber, he was suddenly shocked. There was no arrow stuck in Ling Han's chest. As an assassin, how rich was his battle experience? His reactions were also ridiculously fast. He immediately covered his entire body with origin power, and the short saber in his right hand continued to slash at Ling Han's neck. He didn't know how Ling Han had dodged that arrow, and even deliberately lured him into a trap, but a mountain river tier cultivator would definitely be able to crush a shattering void tier cultivator. At such a close distance, what tricks could Ling Han play? Even if he took 10,000 steps back, he still covered his entire body with origin power, so what if he was attacked by 1,000 shattering void tier cultivators at the same time? It was impossible to injure him. No matter what, he was already standing in the safest and most advantageous position. But would things really turn out as he had expected? Ling Han revealed a smile, suddenly condensed his spirit, and charged towards the other party. 7 kills, subduing soul technique. Wang, under the attack of the spirit, the man in black immediately revealed a hint of confusion and fell into a state of unconsciousness. Ling Han took the chance to wrap his divine sense around him and drew him into the black tower. Ding! At this time, the short saber sliced at Ling Han's neck, but in the black tower, Ling Han was a true god. With a paw, this short saber immediately turned into powder. So what if it was forged from godly metal? With a single thought from Ling Han, the iron powder once again gathered together. He could not waste it. He could recast it and make it into an arrow for him. Now, his strongest killing move was the annihilating dragon star arrow, but the arrow was a big problem. Shooting an arrow was equivalent to shooting out a shocking amount of wealth. With Ling Han's current strength, the 7 kill subduing soul technique would only be effective for an instant against elites in the low extreme of mountain river tier. The man in black immediately came to his senses. He could not help but sneer and said, "I underestimated you. Not only are you extremely daring, but your defense is also so shocking, actually being able to take an arrow from me without injury." "Huh, where is this?" He immediately revealed an expression of shock. This was definitely not the alleyway from before, but a boundless grassland. An illusion? Ling Han smiled faintly. With his physique, he naturally could take an attack from someone in the low extreme of mountain river tier head-on, but it was difficult to dissipate the force, so he was sent flying. However, he still deliberately controlled himself, and when he landed, he took the chance to draw the arrow into the black tower. Then he used the blood of a demonic beast to replace his own blood, making the man think that he had been hit. This was all thought of and done in an instant. Even Ling Han was very satisfied. He had captured a mountain river tier cultivator alive. If he had not made the man careless, how could he have gotten so close to him? Even if the 7 kill subduing soul technique was effective, he would not have been able to get close to the man in time. In the short time he charged over, the man would have already woken up, and after suffering a loss once, it would be difficult to make the man fall for the same trick again. Ling Han had undoubtedly created a miracle. With the cultivation of the shattering void tier, he had captured a mountain river tier cultivator. It was guaranteed that no one would believe it if he told others. Wasn't this a fantasy? It was as if a body refining tier cultivator could kill a shattering void tier cultivator. It was absolutely preposterous. "You are not underestimating me. You are underestimating me too much." Ling Han shrugged. "Tell me, who sent you to kill me, and what is your identity?" "Haha." The man in black laughed coldly. This was really a great joke. Was the man in black interrogating him? A shattering void tier cultivator. His expression became stern, and killing intent surged. "Enough nonsense, die." Oh. Chapter 934. The black-robed man attacked, slapping towards Ling Han. Ling Han did not dodge, and allowed the other party to strike him head-on. He calmly said, "You are now in my grasp. If I want you to live, then you can live. If I want you to die, then the only path left for you is death." Pong! This slap landed solidly, but Ling Han did not even take half a step back, as if the other party had only lightly slapped him. How is this possible? The black-robed man was so shocked that his hair stood on end. This was beyond his imagination, making him feel an unknown fear. Ling Han smiled and said, "Welcome to my world." Illusion, all of this is an illusion. The black-robed man took a few steps back. He had been absent-minded for a moment just now, and that must have been when he was hit. What he felt now was all fake. Ling Han stretched out his hand and pressed down, saying, "Come, I'll have to torture you first." How strange, I'm clearly not someone who likes to use violence. Why do people have to force me? Boom, a huge mountain appeared, pressing towards the black-robed man. The black-robed man was immediately pressed onto the ground. The mountain was like divine metal, and the weight was so frightening that the black-robed man had to use all his strength to resist, but the divine light around his body was on the verge of collapse, and he could not hold on for long. Ah! He let out a scream, and a dozen of his bones broke in an instant. Ling Han raised his hand slightly, lest the black-robed man be crushed to death directly. Ling Han waved his hand again, and the black cloth on the black-robed man's face immediately disappeared, revealing an extremely ordinary face. It was the kind of face that people would not take a second look at on the streets. But it should be known that after cultivating to the immortal level, one would naturally have an extraordinary aura, and could easily be distinguished from ordinary people. Strange. Ling Han became curious and sat cross-legged on the ground, saying, "You're an assassin, right? You've specially cultivated some kind of technique to make you look more ordinary." The black-robed man only knew how to scream. As an assassin, before he had cultivated killing techniques, he had first received all kinds of cruel tests. Only after passing would he be truly accepted, to ensure that even if he was accidentally captured, he would not reveal the organization's secrets. Although he was screaming miserably, he did not have the slightest intention of begging for mercy. Ling Han smiled and said, "In here I am the true God. There are only things that I can't think of, and there is nothing that I can't do. If you're so tolerant, then I'll use all the torture methods I can think of on you." As he tortured the black-clothed man, he cultivated at the same time. In any case, he couldn't waste any time. The black-clothed man was very persistent, but after half a day, he gave up. Inside the Black Tower, his pain was magnified 100-fold. Even if a small knife lightly cut his body, the pain would penetrate deep into his bones and directly reach his soul, completely disintegrating the willpower that he was so proud of. "I'm Meng Yi, a junior assassin from the Dark Knight Hall," he said. His eyes were staring blankly like an idiot. As Ling Han listened, he realized that someone had invited the Dark Knight Hall to offer a bounty of 10,000 true origin stones for his life. This was an astonishing amount of wealth, and if it was only for the life of a Shattering Void tier elite, it was likely that those in the low extreme of the Mountain River tier, or even the medium extreme, would be tempted to make a quick profit. It was practically a gift. Meng Yi was only an assassin of the lowest level, so he naturally couldn't possibly know who the employer was. He was merely lucky to be the first to receive this mission. Of course, from the looks of it now, his luck was extraordinarily bad. Chapter 935. This strike was too fast, so the sword had already pierced over, but the sound had not yet reached its destination. Ling Han clenched his fist and pong, it smashed onto the sword light. Instantly, the brilliant sword light shattered into pieces, and a figure was also forced back by him. However, that person did have some skill. With a somersault in the air, he dissipated the majority of the power of Ling Han's punch, and landed steadily on the ground. This was a woman, and she looked to be only in her 20s. She was quite beautiful, but her face was filled with arrogance. She was either a young mistress or a pampered daughter of some sect, and was used to being pampered. Behind her, there were another 7 people who were walking over quickly. They were all men, and only one of them was a white-haired old man. The other 6 were all young men, and they exuded a vigorous heroic spirit. "Junior sister." Those 6 young men immediately ran over, and surrounded the young beauty, their concern evident in their words and expressions. "Junior sister, are you all right? That guy didn't hurt you, right? Damn it, he actually dared to touch my junior sister." These people were concerned about the beauty, and at the same time they glared fiercely at Ling Han, as if they wanted nothing more than to kill him with their gazes. They completely ignored the fact that it was actually the woman who had made the first move. Ling Han couldn't help but feel it was funny. This woman had attacked him for no reason, and he was only defending himself. Why did it seem like he had done something unforgivable? He shook his head and said, "Don't you guys feel that you owe me an explanation and an apology?" An explanation? An apology? Those people all smirked coldly. He had injured their junior sister, and actually wanted them to explain and apologize? Had this guy's head been kicked by a donkey? Humph, you're just a mere plunderer, and everyone has the right to punish you. Yet you actually want an explanation and an apology? How laughable! One of the young men said. Hearing his words, the anger in Ling Han's heart actually subsided a little. Indeed, there was no need to follow any rules when making a move against a plunderer. Otherwise, it would only result in one's own death. However, which eye of yours saw that he looked like a plunderer? You guys think that I am a plunderer? Ling Han shook his head. Your eyes are really quite cruel. I need to properly treat my eyes. Evil thief, the map in your hands belongs to one of my senior brothers. If you aren't a plunderer, how could it possibly have fallen into your hands? The woman had already caught her breath, and immediately rebuked Ling Han. How laughable! Ling Han scoffed. Could it be that I can't kill the plunderers and snatch it from their hands? Young man, since that's the case, then please return the map to us, the only elder said. His voice was low, and it carried a very powerful might. He was in the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, so he naturally didn't take Ling Han seriously. Ling Han laughed loudly. This was anger, and he said, putting aside the question of whether this map originally belonged to you since I obtained it, you guys should at least lower your attitude if you want to take it back, right? I'm not your slave, yet you guys are acting all arrogant and condescending. What do I owe you guys? Bullshit, a young man rebuked. This was originally ours, so shouldn't it be returned to us? Ling Han scoffed and said, it's yours. Perhaps this map has existed for tens of millions of years, and is an antique. Its true owner has long since died, so how can it be yours? At most, it's just that you guys snatched it from somewhere. There's no need to be so self-righteous. Young man, are you asking for trouble? The elder said with a humph. Seventh uncle, there's no need to waste words with this kind of person. Capture him, the woman said. Among those present, only she dared to speak like this. Who asked her to be favored? The elder thought for a moment and said, fine, but try not to injure anyone. The 7 young men all smirked coldly. Try not to injure anyone, and that was fine even if they were injured. The strength of this group of people was much stronger than that of the plunderers from before. Aside from the elder, who was in the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, the 7 of them had also advanced into the Sun-Moon tier. Their strength ranged from the early stage of the low extreme to the peak stage, but none of them had advanced into the medium extreme. True, if they didn't have this bit of strength, how could they dare to search for those plunderers everywhere? In that case, this treasure map really did have some value. With a thought, Ling Han stored the treasure map and the egg into the Black Tower. Then he said coldly, although you guys aren't plunderers, you're not much better either. I'll give you one last warning, apologize to me. Otherwise, you can only pray for the best. How laughable. You still dare to threaten us at a time like this? Just kill him. In any case, his spatial spirit tool won't be able to escape. That's right, kill him. We're disciples of the Heaven Sword Palace. The 7 of them said one after another. Heaven Sword Palace. Instantly Ling Han's killing intent soared. He hadn't gone to seek trouble with the 5 sects yet, and he had already encountered them. They really had the demeanor of the 5 sects, being so arrogant. He calmly said, aren't you guys afraid that I have a backer who can annihilate the Heaven Sword Palace with a flip of my hand? Haha, those who truly have a backer wouldn't let you run around by yourself. They definitely have a protector protecting you in secret, a young man said with a scoff. Did they think they were idiots? They were very clear about who they could provoke and who they couldn't provoke. Moreover, let me tell you one more thing. Another young man said. All those who come from great clans and forces have a clear symbol on their bodies. He raised his sleeve, and they saw that there was a sword embroidered on it. It was very small, and if one didn't pay attention they would really miss it. So that's how it is. Ling Han nodded and said, thank you for this information, and as a reward for you, I'll send you on your way. He wanted to overthrow the 5 sects, but he didn't have any thoughts of killing everyone. That was because he thought that no matter how evil a sect was, there could still be people who were righteous. Thus, he only planned to disband the 5 sects, kill the higher-ups, and then let the others leave. But these people in front of him, they caused killing intent to rise in his heart. What shameless boasting! The 7 people all smirked coldly. Even though they were young, which one of them hadn't cultivated for 200,000 to 300,000 years? Who knew how much blood their hands had been stained with? So how could they possibly be soft-hearted? The treasure map is extremely important, so we definitely can't leave anyone alive. Kill! The 7 of them attacked, showing no mercy. Ling Han humphed, and with a flick of his finger, sword chi rained down on the 7 people. Previously he hadn't killed them, not because he was soft-hearted, but rather because he didn't have the habit of killing indiscriminately. But now, since these people wanted to seek death, he naturally didn't mind sending them on their way. Not good. The old man instantly paled when he saw Ling Han attack. This was too terrifying. It was clearly only a few flick of his finger, yet the battle prowess that Ling Han had erupted with was almost on par with his own. One had to realize that Ling Han was already at the middle stage of the low extreme, and his power could surpass 6 stars. Thus, his battle prowess was actually at the peak stage of the medium extreme. How terrifying was this? Pew pew pew. The 7 people's heads exploded from the rain of swords at the same time, and not a single one of them had a complete corpse. Although the old man had moved, he was still a step too late. He could only watch as his 7 juniors were slaughtered. These were prodigies that the sect had nurtured for 100,000 to 200,000 years. The old man's heart was dripping with blood. He glared at Ling Han viciously and said, "Brat, I'm going to cut off your flesh piece by piece and feed it to the dogs." This attracted everyone's attention. She hurriedly stuck out her tongue, appearing even more innocent and innocent. Yi Chongyun finally walked back, gritting his teeth. He also picked up a chair, but didn't dare to sit next to Ling Han. Instead, he placed his chair further behind. Those who were still conscious on the ground slowly crawled up and picked up their chairs to sit down. Like Yi Chongyun, they didn't dare to sit next to Ling Han. This was respect for an elite. Ling Han's strength had far surpassed their level. Counting them, there were exactly 10 people, so there was no need to fight anymore. This caused the left minister and the others to be slightly shocked. Could it be that Ling Han had already calculated when he delivered this attack? If that was the case, then this young man's strength would have to be estimated a little higher. Ling Han didn't do it deliberately. He only controlled the power of his attack so that the strongest group wouldn't faint. He didn't think that there would be exactly 10 people present. Thus Ma Xing, Yang Zi, and the others were all present. The right minister and the 7 generals all took a few more glances at Ling Han. Such a freak of the shattering void tier, even they were moved and remembered this name. But that was all. The 9th king, however, appeared very excited, and asked Ling Han, "What's your name?" "I am Ling Han," Ling Han said, standing up, neither servile nor overbearing. The 9th king couldn't help but clap her hands. "This time will definitely be first. Hey, this is the first time I've done something for Big Sister. And I'm already so beautiful. In the future, no one is allowed to call me little idiot." After saying that, she stuck out her tongue again. This was a big embarrassment. All right, all of you can go back." She hurriedly shooed them away, obviously not wanting to be laughed at. No one dared to disobey, and all left. The 9th king's order was the empress's order, and no one could disobey. Among the top 10, 7 came from the Scarlet Heaven Academy. Those 6 followed behind Ling Han, their eyes filled with reverence, and there was even fanaticism in their eyes. They had reached the height of 19 stars of Shattering Void Tier, or even 20 stars of Battle Prowess, and were deeply aware of the difficulty of reaching and surpassing this step. Naturally, they were filled with reverence and adoration towards Ling Han. The might of that palm strike just now had practically astonished them. Along the way, they were like attendants, guarding Ling Han as he entered the academy. This caused others to click their tongues in wonder. Oh, Zhao Luan revealed a smile. He was still standing under that waterfall because he was cultivating a secret technique. His body couldn't move and he was observing this waterfall, comprehending some kind of pattern. The person from this small world actually has battle prowess that exceeds 20 stars. He appeared to be slightly surprised. Wuxia was currently reporting to him what had happened these few days. Yes, young master, Wuxia said respectfully, a sliver of admiration in his eyes. The strength of this ant from this small world somewhat surpassed his expectations. Luoba was insta-killed in one move, and now he became the representative of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. Since he has obtained the right to participate in the battle, then it's not good to kill him, or else if the Empress blames us. When Zhao Luan said this, he couldn't help but shiver. Even a genius like him would still tremble in his heart at the mention of the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. In the hearts of all the citizens of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire was eternally invincible, an existence that could never be surpassed. Young master, what do you plan to do? Zuoxiao asked. He understood this young master of his, and definitely wouldn't spare Ling Han just like that. Zhao Luan laughed loudly and said, "Let him live for now, and kill him after the competition between the three empires. However, it's not that easy for him. Go and make arrangements," he instructed. Zuoxiao couldn't help but smile and said, "Haha, even if that brat can safely survive tonight, he'll still be hated by the entire Western institution." Chapter 937. Ling Han cultivated in his room, his mind calm. He was progressing further and further on the path of combining 6 techniques into one, and added with the fact that he had money in his hands, he could buy enough alchemical pills. His power was currently increasing at an astonishing rate. At most half a year, or even less, he could reach the limit of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier. He looked attentive, but his hair immediately stood on end, because there was another person in the courtyard without a sound. This person was dressed in black, his face covered with a veil, and he even had a cloak draped over his body. Even his figure could not be seen. Was this another assassin from the Dark Knight Hall? However, the Dark Knight Hall was actually so bold, daring to make a move in the Scarlet Heaven Academy. Die! The black-robed man said with a cold humph, and suddenly attacked, striking out at Ling Han. Why was his speed so slow? Ling Han could clearly sense that there were even 3 mountains and rivers moving behind this person, but the might of this strike was at most 22 stars of Shattering Void tier, 23 stars of Shattering Void tier, completely inconsistent with the cultivation level of the high extreme of the Mountain River tier. He leaped, dodging this strike. Xiao, the black-robed man, pursued, and struck out another palm strike at Ling Han. This strike was much more powerful, reaching the level of 25 stars of Shattering Void tier. It was too easy to raise 2 stars of Shattering Void tier battle prowess in the Mountain River tier, and it was a matter of a single thought. Ling Han frowned and hurriedly flashed again, escaping from the courtyard. The black-robed man chased, attacking continuously, but not with the destructive power of the Mountain River tier, merely driving Ling Han away. One chased and the other fled. Their speed was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, they left the northern institution, heading west. Ling Han instantly understood that the other party wanted to chase him to the Western institution. In the Scarlet Heaven Academy, the 4 institutions were incompatible like fire and water, full of fierce competition. If a student of the Northern institution appeared in the Western institution, what would the result be? He would be beaten into a horrible state. The other party wanted to use the whole Western institution to make him better. This person was definitely not a member of the Dark Knight Hall. Otherwise, he would not have done such an unnecessary thing. Moreover, if he was really a member of the Dark Knight Hall, how could he have entered the Scarlet Heaven Academy? He should have been killed long ago. But a black-clothed man of unknown origin was openly committing murder. What did this mean? The higher-ups of the academy definitely knew of this person's identity, but they didn't do anything to stop him, which meant that they were afraid of his background. That left only one person. Zhao Luan. This person was definitely Zhao Luan's subordinate, and the higher-ups of the academy also knew that this person would not act recklessly. Thus they turned a blind eye to this. After all, Zhao Luan was the only son of great General Zhao. Who would dare to not give him face? Bam! The black-clothed man suddenly launched a heavy attack. With a single blow, Ling Han was immediately sent flying and crashed heavily into a courtyard wall. Who is it? This was the dormitory of the Shattering Void Tier Division of the Western Institution. Immediately, a great many people ran out and discovered Ling Han amidst the ruins. The black-clothed man's figure had long since flashed and disappeared without a trace. Ling Han stood up. That black-clothed man's last attack did not use any force, but the attack was too fast, making him unable to dodge. Naturally, it was completely impossible to injure him. Someone from the Northern Institution. It's Ling Han. The first among this batch of new students. Fuck, does he think that just because his battle prowess exceeds 20 stars, he can come to our Western Institution to behave atrociously? Hit him. There were as many as 2,000 students in the Shattering Void Tier Division of the Western Institution, and every one of them had entered the academy for more than 5 years. How could their battle prowess reach 15 stars? With so many people added together, which Shattering Void Tier cultivator wouldn't cower? Moreover, it was Ling Han who barged into the Western Institution, so he deserved to be beaten up. Who could he reason with? Forced? Who forced you to become a black-clothed man? What a joke. Anyone who wore black clothes was a black-clothed man. Ling Han smirked coldly internally. He knew that Zhao Luan was trying to disgust him. The latter did not dare to kill him in the academy grounds, but the son of the great General Zhao could do as he pleased. So what if he made you unhappy? If he was no match for him, then he would definitely be beaten up. If by any chance he could win, then he would similarly provoke the wrath of the Mountain River Tier students of the Western Institution. Aren't you being too arrogant, coming to the Western Institution alone to strut around? Ling Han thought of what Shui Yinyu had said. Zhao Luan was like a poisonous snake. It was indeed a very appropriate comment. A few dozen people immediately charged over. Now that they had the advantage in numbers, they were naturally not the slightest bit afraid of Ling Han. Ling Han stretched out a hand and grabbed one of them, using him as a shield. He smiled and said, "Everyone, I accidentally walked the wrong way. My apologies, I will leave now. How about we part on good terms?" Humph, barging into our Western Institution, and still thinking of swaggering off as if nothing had happened? Ling Han, aren't you a little too arrogant? Can you boast now, being able to barge into our Western Institution alone, and then leave unscathed? In your dreams. They made a move, but with a shield they naturally had many misgivings. Don't take hostages if you dare. That's right, let's fight fair and square. They goaded him. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. You hundreds and thousands of people ganging up on me, this could be considered fair and square. However, he really wasn't afraid. Since you guys insist on fighting, then let's fight. Ling Han casually tossed the hostage in his hand aside. What was there for him to fear? Haha, beat him up. A few dozen people charged over again, and even more people surrounded to watch the battle. Even if a Shattering Void Tier cultivator could casually strike from over 30 meters away, over 1,000 people were still too many after all and definitely couldn't attack at the same time. Ling Han's right fist bulged and he punched out. Pung! His strength was really too strong and one punch was like a crushing mountain. Instantly, over a dozen people were sent flying, directly fainting. The students of the Western Institution were all shocked. What kind of fuck you battle prowess was this? One punch could send over a dozen people flying. One had to know that to be accepted by the Scarlet Heaven Academy, which one of them wasn't a genius among geniuses. I don't believe that we can't take care of him with so many of us. People surged towards Ling Han like an ocean, but Ling Han only needed to throw a punch, and over a dozen people were sent flying like rice straws, fainting with a single blow, immediately losing their ability to fight. After a dozen punches, over 200 people had fallen on the scene. There were still close to 1,800 people from the Western Institution still standing, but that would only be a matter of a few hundred more punches. Too freakish. How could a Shattering Void Tier cultivator be this strong? They were all humans, but why was the gap between them so great? Should they also squeeze into some small world to gain experience? Anyone else? Ling Han asked calmly. his eyes sweeping over the remaining 1,800 people. Being swept by his gaze, everyone couldn't help but lower their eyes, not daring to meet his gaze. He obviously didn't possess the king's chi, but why did he possess such a strong oppressive force? We definitely can't let him leave so easily. Otherwise, where will our Western institution put its face? At all costs, keep him here. Chapter 938. The students of the Western institution continuously surged forward, all of them fearlessly. This was not a fight to the death, and no matter how ruthless Ling Han was, he could not possibly kill or cripple them. Thus, they were much less apprehensive, and their bravery was stimulated. They wanted to beat up this madman who dared to look down on the Western institution. Unfortunately, no matter how many sheep there were, how could they be a match for a lion? Not to mention that they were not even sheep in front of Ling Han. Ling Han casually punched out, and the crowd was like a goddess scattering flowers. Immediately more than 10 people were sent flying. It was very easy, and there was not the slightest bit of difficulty. Senior apprentice brother Jia. It's yours. Everyone looked towards a skinny youth who was like a bean sprout. His entire body was really just skin and bones. This youth nodded and suddenly sucked in a breath. As if air had been pumped into his left arm. It instantly swelled up, and then it was his right arm, torso, and 2 legs. Only his head still maintained its original appearance. In an instant, he turned from a bean sprout into a 9 meters tall giant. His muscles bulged high, reflecting light as if they had been smeared with a layer of oil. Senior apprentice brother Jia has cultivated the incomplete heaven-devouring art, and usually only has 18 stars of battle prowess. But once he explodes, his battle prowess can reach 21 stars, or even more. Senior apprentice brother Jia's talent is not inferior to Yi Chongyun's in the first place. But Yi Chongyun can reach 21 stars of battle prowess permanently, and senior apprentice brother Jia's explosive battle prowess can definitely surpass it. 22 stars. Everyone was full of hope that senior apprentice brother Jia could turn the tide, and suppress Ling Han, so that the Western institution would not continue to lose face. Pung. Senior apprentice brother Jia rushed towards Ling Han. His current figure was huge and his weight was astonishing. Every step he took was like thunder, and the ground was trembling as if it was about to collapse. With his rush, the others all fled. The current senior apprentice brother Jia was too strong, and even if he was swept by the aftershock of his strength, he would suffer a calamity. Boom! Senior apprentice brother Jia punched out, smashing towards Ling Han's head. In front of his 9 meters tall body, Ling Han was practically like a newborn baby, pitifully small. Beat him to death. Everyone shouted. Ling Han was slightly surprised. The battle prowess that this giant had erupted with actually surpassed Yi Chongyun's. Unfortunately, he had obviously used some kind of secret technique to forcefully increase his battle prowess, and the amount of time he could maintain it was pitifully short. Precisely because of this, the explosion of battle prowess was naturally incomparably terrifying. But compared with Ling Han, this battle prowess was completely lacking. But compared to Ling Han, this was when senior brother Jia's fist had reached the top of Ling Han's head, it could no longer descend. But because the size of the two of them was completely different, senior brother Jia's fist was shockingly large. And when it came crashing down on Ling Han's head, the others couldn't see the exact situation at all. Many people even thought that Ling Han had been hit, and couldn't help but cheer. They roared for a while, yet discovered that Ling Han was still standing steadily, and couldn't help but look shocked. Is this guy a monster? Ling Han raised his hand, and senior apprentice brother Jia's huge body was lifted high above his head. It was like an ant lifting a lion, full of strangeness and disharmony. Go! Ling Han waved his hand, and Xiao, senior apprentice brother Jia, was thrown out. He crashed heavily into a wall, and stopped with a bang. Senior apprentice brother Jia let out an earth-shattering fart, which blew his whole body into the air. However, his body shrank rapidly, and instantly returned to its original size. His battle prowess also returned to 18 stars of shattering void tier. Even someone as strong as senior apprentice brother Jia was no match for him. The people of the West Courtyard were finally afraid. They were not facing an ordinary genius, and the advantage in numbers was completely useless in front of this monster. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, "Still want to fight?" The place where they stood was filled with people lying in disorder. Now this number was already more than half, but Ling Han was still calm and unruffled, as if this couldn't even be considered a warm-up. They shook their heads in unison. No more fighting. This guy was too freakish. It was better to wait for this freak to advance into the Mountain River tier, and then have the senior apprentice brothers and sisters in the Mountain River tier deal with him. No more fighting, then I'm going back to sleep. Ling Han did not say any more words of apology. He had already defeated more than half of the people of the Western institution, and saying sorry now would be equivalent to showing off and would have the opposite effect. He left with his hands clasped behind his back, and the people of the Western institution could only watch on, their eyes spitting fire. Actually, Ling Han was also very displeased. Though he had shown off his might, he had been forced to. Xiaolun, oh Xiaolun, this enmity between us has been formed, Ling Han thought. Did he have the ability to stand against Xiaolun now? No. Putting aside Xiaolun, he couldn't even defeat his 3 great followers, as well as the subordinates of his followers. There was nothing he could do about it. The gap between the Mountain River tier and the Shattering Void tier was really too wide. I have to break through to the Mountain River tier. Then, with my potential, becoming a 5-star genius would definitely not be difficult. Then, once I reach the low extreme, I would be able to match those in the middle stage of the medium extreme. At least I wouldn't be in such a passive position. Xiaolun became enemies with me because of Senior Sister Shui, so Senior Sister Shui is also his weakness. I'll pretend to be intimate with Senior Sister Shui. No matter what, I have to anger him. Not taking revenge when there's a grudge is not in line with my personality. The next day, the monthly examination of the Northern Institution began. This was to test everyone's ability, to see if they had improved or even regressed. After all, some people had held back their energy to enter the academy, and after entering, it was inevitable that they would relax and not cultivate diligently. It was also possible that their ability would decline instead of increasing. The path of martial art was like rowing a boat against the current. If there was a regression, the first time would be a warning, the second time would be the removal of all benefits, and the third time would be expulsion. Thus, the monthly examination was still quite important. All the 500 or so new students had arrived. Shui Yinyu swept her gaze over everyone's faces and said, "Today is the monthly examination, so everyone must do your best. If your performance is worse than when you first entered the academy, you will receive a warning from the academy, and after 3 times you will be directly expelled." "Yes," everyone replied solemnly. Ling Han raised his hand, then stood up and said, "Senior sister, if I get the first place, is there a reward?" Shui Yinyu shook her head and said no. No. Ling Han instantly lost interest, and lay down on the table to sleep. Without a reward, where would he have any motivation? Seeing his lazy appearance, Shui Yinyu couldn't help but feel angry. This guy was obviously so strong, but why didn't he have any initiative or sense of responsibility? If this guy wasn't her husband in name, she really couldn't be bothered with him. "Begin," she said in displeasure. This so-called examination, to put it bluntly, was to fight. Otherwise, what else could it be? But no one dared to challenge Ling Han, and they all tacitly agreed that he was the first place. What a joke. Yesterday, senior brother Ling single-handedly challenged the Western institution. How awesome was that? If you were stronger than senior brother Ling, and the Western institution came looking for trash, wouldn't you have to step forward bravely? Wasn't that asking for a beating? Thus, Ling Han obviously hadn't fought a single battle, yet he automatically became the first place of the monthly examination. Chapter 939. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden stayed for a very long time before finally leaving. She knew a great many of Ling Han's secrets, but she still didn't know about the existence of the Black Tower. That was because there were too many people here and it was too complicated. Ling Han would only bring her into the Black Tower when the two of them were absolutely alone. Additionally, once they entered the army, they couldn't easily leave. They had to accumulate enough merit points. Thus, their current priority was to fight the beings of the netherworld. Furthermore, the army emphasized the importance of teamwork. Thus, it was useless even if Ling Han handed the corpses of the beings of the netherworld in the Black Tower to her. They had to be divided equally among everyone. This was also the reason why the army was safe, yet the accumulation of merit points was slow. They didn't emphasize individual heroism, and instead placed the importance of teamwork. Thus, Ling Han needed to wait until the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden retired, before he could win the heart of this beauty. When the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden returned, Julian immediately asked nervously, "Sister, what did he say?" There was still a bit of the air of a young and inexperienced girl. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't help but feel diffident. She could say that Ling Han was actually the man that she was destined to be with since a long time ago. It was just that they had only met again after 10,000 years. At first, she had come to deliver a love letter on behalf of her close friend, but in the end, she had hooked up with him instead. "This?" she said hesitantly. Zhu Liyun's expression changed and she asked, "Did you give the letter to Grandmaster Ling or not?" "Big Sister Yun, he isn't suitable for you. You'd better forget about him," the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden advised. Zhu Liyun didn't say anything. She stared at her for a while, and then said, "Don't tell me that you've fallen in love with him?" There was nothing wrong with saying that. However, she was a whole 10,000 years too early. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't explain this, so she could only look on speechlessly. "Damn you, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden!" Zhu Liyun was enraged. She pointed at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and said, "You bitch, I've treated you like a sister. Yet this is how you repay me? You've even stolen your own sister's man. Why don't you go and die?" A hint of anger appeared on the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's face, and she said, "Setting aside whether I interfered or not, do you think that Ling Han will definitely fall in love with you?" "Why not?" Zhu Liyun shouted. "I'm at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, and he's only a measly level 4 or level 5 alchemist. Truth be told, it's actually him who's trying to curry favor with me, and I didn't even turn my back on him. What does he have to be displeased about?" "Auntie, you're really narcissistic." At this moment, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden naturally knew that Ling Han couldn't possibly be lying. He was a genuine level 8 alchemist, so cultivators at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier really weren't much in front of him. At the very least, they would have to bow down to him. Firstly, you don't have any beauty, secondly, you're old, and thirdly, your status is also slightly inferior. What right do you have to say that Ling Han is a social climber? At first, she still felt slightly apologetic towards Zhu Liyun. However, when she heard Zhu Liyun say this, anger welled up in her heart, and this bit of guilt was swept away completely. She didn't know Zhu Liyun anything in the first place. "Bitch, let's make a clean break from now on," Zhu Liyun said as she walked away. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden shook her head. Zhu Liyun was the only friend she had made after entering the military camp. Unfortunately, she couldn't withstand the slightest test. Speaking of which, Zhu Liyun naturally wouldn't give up. She immediately went to find Ling Han. Since the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't convey her feelings on her behalf, she naturally could only thicken her skin and do it herself. In reality, she hadn't been shy before. Rather, she had wanted to give Ling Han the impression that she was reserved. However, how could Ling Han possibly be interested in her? Even a seductive beauty like Lin Yuqi couldn't move him, let alone a middle-aged woman with no beauty at all. More importantly, they didn't know each other at all, okay? After being politely but firmly rejected by Ling Han, Zhu Liyun returned to her own tent with a livid expression. Her expression was ice-cold, and she fiercely said, "Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, I had thought that you were pretty, and that you might have some powerful connections. That was why I wanted to befriend you. But I didn't think that you would steal the man of my dreams. Humph, since the Xie clan is looking for you, then I'll lend them a hand." Also, that damn man made it sound so nice, saying that he already has a woman he loves, and that we're not suitable for each other. Hey, isn't it all because that bitch is better than me? You dare to humiliate me like this? Humph, when the people of the Xie clan come, they'll kill you as well. You're only a level 4 or level 5 alchemist, yet you dare to be so arrogant? Humph. She released a bird that was only the size of a bee. This was a hummingbird, and although it didn't have any offensive abilities, its advantage lay in its speed. In fact, it could even rival heavenly body tier elites. This was something that she had caught by chance, and after training it, it had become her communication tool. She was a veteran Sun Moon tier elite, and her merit points were so high that she could have long since retired dozens of times. However, she had remained in the Purple Moon Army because it was safer to travel with the army. Moreover, her merit points could be used to purchase alchemical pills, god tools, and so on. When she had first entered the two-realm battlefield, she had only been at the low extreme of the Sun Moon tier. Now, however, she was at the consummate level, and this was only because she had exchanged for a large number of alchemical pills. Of course, this was also because her cultivation talent was extraordinary. Otherwise, alchemical pills alone wouldn't have been enough. After so many years, she had naturally built up a considerable network of contacts in the Purple Moon Army. Now that she was using the hummingbird to transmit information, it wouldn't take long for the news to reach the ears of the Xie clan. At most, in 2 months, the people of the Xie clan would appear here. I'm waiting for a good show. With Ling Han helping to win over the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's support, her reputation in the Purple Moon Army instantly skyrocketed. Everyone knew that the reason why Ling Han was so generous was because he wanted to pursue the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. In the next few days, the Purple Moon Army encountered a few more netherworld beings, and they won all of their battles. Ling Han contributed a large number of explosive thunder pills, not to mention an increase of 1 star of battle prowess. An increase of 1 star of battle prowess for an entire army was extremely terrifying. However, their consecutive victories also provoked the netherworld, and they dispatched an even more powerful army to search for them. This was an army that was composed entirely of elites at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, and there were as many as 50 of them. This was an unstoppable force, and the Purple Moon Army didn't dare to oppose it at all. They immediately chose to retreat. The purpose of their expedition was to exterminate some netherworld beings, and their second purpose was to search for realm spirit stones. Now that they had exterminated a large number of enemies, they hadn't found a single realm spirit stone. This disappointed them greatly. Since they had already attracted the attention of elites, the army of women decided to directly return to the army camp. They would only come out after a period of time. In any case, Ling Han couldn't enter the Purple Moon Army, so he didn't plan to return with the army of women. He was alone, and he also had the Black Tower to hide in. The dangerous two-realm battlefield was nothing to him. He wanted to kill more netherworld beings and accumulate merit points. This would allow him to exchange them for godly metal. Moreover, if he could pick up some realm spirit stones, he would be rich. He could exchange them for a vast amount of godly metal. Ling Han had already placed increasing the quality of his divine demon sword in an extremely important position. This was second only to increasing his own strength. He decided to venture deeper into the two-realm battlefield and kill more netherworld beings. Chapter 940. The left minister only sighed ruefully, and did not go into too much detail about the situation of the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm. If he didn't say, Ling Han naturally couldn't ask in detail. He wanted to find Shui Yinyu later, and ask her for a more detailed explanation. They rode the carriage of the left minister's residence, and their speed was astonishingly fast. Not long after, they arrived in front of the imperial palace. Here, even the left minister couldn't drive a carriage in. After alighting from the carriage, the guards verified the identities of the 3 people before letting them in. During this period, don't speak out of turn, the left minister warned very sternly. Yes. Ling Han and Xiang Chengyun both obeyed. This was the center of power of the entire Chaotic Star's majestic empire, and also one of the 3 centers of power on the joint peace planet. The main color of the imperial palace was pink, which was a bit feminine, but it couldn't be helped. The ruler here was an empress, and she was also known as the most beautiful woman in the world. Even the rulers of the other 2 majestic empires were willing to give up their land and throne for her. If she wasn't extremely feminine, who else could she be? Ling Han was somewhat expectant. He was finally going to see this legendary empress. How alluring and enchanting was she that even the 2 great emperors were willing to serve under her skirt. Xiang Qingyun's breathing quickened a bit disappointingly. It wasn't that he hadn't seen the Empress before, but the Empress's beauty was too alluring, making his heart beat faster and his breathing tense just thinking about it. It could be said that for those who had seen the Empress, there was no beauty in their eyes. They only had room for such an exquisite beauty that could bring calamity and chaos to the world. Compared to her, the so-called beauties completely paled in comparison, and were trash among trash. After entering deep into the imperial palace, the guards here were changed to women. They were probably afraid that men were unreliable. If they were placed here as guards, the possibility of embezzlement would be higher, and it would instead be unsafe. The location of the tournament was arranged at the Imperial Martial Arts Field. Not only was the field of the tournament very large, the spectator seats were also very large. There were 4 platforms protruding from above like cliffs, and the one facing south was the largest, like an emperor. This was naturally the seat exclusive to the Empress, and usually only the 9 kings could sit there. The other 3 platforms were much smaller. The one in the east was given to the Eternity Sky Empire, the one in the west was given to the Sky Jade Empire, and the one in the north was shared by the left and right ministers, the 7 generals and other high officials. Every time there was a power struggle between the 3 majestic empires, because it involved the prestige of a majestic empire, the standards were considerably high. The other 2 majestic empires would each send an imperial prince to lead the team. The one from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire would be the younger brother of the current emperor, while the one from the Jade Drop Majestic Empire would be the 4th uncle of the emperor. Both of them were powerful figures who wielded immense power in the empire, and their abilities had both advanced into the heavenly body tier. Ling Han naturally did not have the right to sit on any one of the 4 high platforms. Xiang Qingyun, on the other hand, was able to stand on the north platform thanks to the minister of the left. Since he was below, he naturally couldn't see the situation on the high platform. This made Ling Han feel slightly regretful. Even if Empress Luanxing came, he wouldn't be able to see it. It wasn't that he had any thoughts about this empress. It was purely that he had heard too much about her absolute beauty, so he was curious and wanted to see it with his own eyes. The contestants of the 3 majestic empress were all standing on the tournament field, and a tournament stage had been built in the middle. This was a tournament stage battle, so there naturally had to be the rules of the tournament stage. Whoever was knocked off the tournament stage would be considered to have lost. Otherwise, if one fled and the other chased, how many years would they have to fight for? What kind of powerful figures were all present? How would they have so much time to play around with shattering void tier cultivators? Brother Ling, I've just received the news. This is a bit troublesome. Yi Chang'an suddenly ran over, then waved at the other 8 people, and said, "Everyone, come and listen." "What trouble?" Ma Xing said carelessly. "With senior brother Ling here, we'll definitely get first place." "That's right." The others nodded one after another. Ling Han's performance had already completely won over everyone. Yet Yi Chang'an shook his head and said, "I just received the news just now, and have already investigated the contestants of the other 2 majestic empires. They too have 2 freaks." "Could they be more freakish than senior brother Ling?" Ma Xing said, fanning his hands, appearing unconcerned. Yet Yi Chang'an shook his head and said, "The one from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire is said to be the descendant of the Peacock King, while the one from the Jade Drop Majestic Empire is known as the Great Turtle King, and is speculated to be the descendant of the divine beast Black Tortoise." This time everyone was somewhat moved. This involved a divine beast, so battle prowess couldn't be measured with common sense. Meanwhile, Ling Han was finally a little interested, and said, "Then I'd like to see for myself." He was too strong in the Shattering Void tier, and had always had an overwhelming advantage. Now, if someone could challenge him, it would instead give him a pleasant surprise. Being invincible was too lonely. Seeing Ling Han so confident, everyone's hearts calmed slightly. Although Ling Han didn't have any bloodline advantage, he was similarly a freak. "Her Majesty has arrived," a female official shouted loudly, her voice echoing endlessly above the martial arts field. Shua, everyone stood up, and respectfully welcomed the Empress's arrival. Ling Han raised his head to look at the southern platform, but couldn't see anything, and couldn't help but feel disappointed. There was an uproar on the platform. Empress Luanxing's strength was not only awe-inspiring, but also so beautiful that even the two monarchs were completely subdued. Who wouldn't want to take a few more glances? Unfortunately, because of the position, only the people on the other three platforms could see the Empress's true appearance. Let's begin. A slightly stuttering voice said. It was the ninth king. As expected, the ninth king and the Empress were as close as sisters. This voice came down from the southern platform. The first place in the last tournament was the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire. So this time, the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire will defend the arena. The second place last time was the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire, so the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire will be the first to attack, and the J-Drop Majestic Empire will be the second. The ninth king adjusted her emotions, and finally didn't stutter in her next sentence. The three majestic empires had obviously already arranged the order of appearance. Thus, when the ninth king's voice fell, a person from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire had already jumped onto the arena, and from the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire's side, a person called Mo Xiang was the first to attack. Ling Han didn't pay much attention. He was the last to stand guard, and there was still a lot of time before it was his turn. No matter how many people were left on either side, he didn't care. He searched around the ordinary platforms and soon found Shui Yinyu. She had come with the others from the academy, and when she discovered Ling Han's gaze, the female companions beside her instantly laughed, teasing Shui Yinyu, causing this great beauty to blush. Ling Han found Luo Lai again. He sat behind a few middle-aged men and old men, and when he discovered Ling Han's gaze, his expression was a little strange, both angry and a little smug. However, those middle-aged and old men all cast a cold gaze at Ling Han, not concealing the killing intent in their eyes at all. They were all members of the Luo clan. Ling Han said in his mind, that was why they hated him so much. Then just wait for me to sweep through the world, and make them even more jealous and hateful. There was no absolute defense in this world, only attacks that were not powerful enough. Zhong Hai sneered and still turned around. However, this time his back suddenly bulged, and his clothes split open, revealing an oval black tortoise shell. It was covered with divine patterns, and at this moment it was already intertwining and shining. He was obviously only in the Shattering Void tier, yet he could activate the divine patterns. Although there were only a few, their power was naturally extremely powerful. This was his bloodline, which allowed him to possess a bit of the power of the immortal level in advance. Xiao 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 xiao, the 100 feathers shot out at the same time, bursting with dazzling light on the tortoise shell. The 100 feathers swept past, but Zhong Hai was not injured at all. Ha 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 ha. Zhong Hai counterattacked Yu Rong. He did not attack, and merely used the tortoise's back as a shield, ramming towards Yu Rong. His goal was very obvious. He wanted to knock Yu Rong off the stage so that he could win without a fight. This was very despicable, but the effect was very good. The tortoise shell's defense was too terrifying, and it was intertwined with divine patterns. A Shattering Void tier elite would definitely not feel good if they were hit by it. After Yu Rong was forced into a corner, it was equivalent to announcing her defeat. She was knocked off the stage. Yu Rong was fuming with anger. In terms of real battle prowess, she definitely did not lose to Zhong Hai, but fighting on the stage was too disadvantageous for her. Her powerful attack was almost useless. In this way, the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire would be the third place this time, and could only compete with the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire and J-Drop Majestic Empire for the first place. Zhong Hai's method of victory attracted boos. Beauties had an extra affinity with the audience, and now everyone naturally supported Yu Rong, wanting nothing more than to boo Zhong Hai off the stage. However, Zhong Hai's skin was as thick as his tortoise shell, and he stood on the stage without the slightest bit of shame. Instead, he crooked his finger in Ling Han's direction, full of provocation. Senior brother Ling, destroy him. The people of the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire were all angry. You're too arrogant. Ling Han smiled faintly, and slowly walked to the front of the stage. He walked up the stairs, appearing extremely calm. Hurry up, defeat you and we'll be the first, Zhong Hai said arrogantly. Ling Han did not speed up, nor did he slow down. His heart was firm, and how could he be fooled by others? He walked onto the stage and said, Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire, Ling Han. J-Drop Majestic Empire, Zhonghai please. Please. When Ling Han also said please, Zhonghai immediately revealed a sinister smile and swung a fist at Ling Han. Ling Han casually slashed out, and a flash of sword chi easily dispelled this punch. Not bad, Zhonghai sneered. His punch just now was just to test the waters. His expression froze and he clenched his fists tightly. His originally black and white eyes actually turned deathly white. Raging sea fist, he roared and suddenly punched out with both fists. Instantly, the sound of waves rang out, and a phantom image of a tsunami appeared, crashing towards Ling Han. Battle prowess of 22 stars of shattering void tier, almost approaching 23 stars. Ling Han evaluated in his mind. However, what was his current battle prowess? Go! He rushed out and struck out with a palm. Golden light surged and directly broke through the tsunami, continuing to strike towards Zhonghai. Zhonghai immediately revealed an expression of shock. What kind of attack did Ling Han have? It actually broke through his raging sea fist so easily. He hurriedly turned around, planning to use the same trick again, and use his natural defense to win. Hong! Ling Han's palm pressed on the tortoise shell, and both of their figures froze. The divine patterns on the tortoise shell flashed. It was blocked again. The spectators were all disappointed. They naturally hoped that Ling Han could win, and the people of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire were no exception. A crisp sound was heard, and a crack actually appeared on the tortoise shell. Then, like a spider web, it spread all over the tortoise's back in an instant. Then it shattered piece by piece like porcelain. Chapter 942. Shattered tortoise in the eyes of ordinary creatures was synonymous with powerful defense. Even fierce tigers and lions couldn't do anything to a tortoise's shell. And after entering the level of demonic beasts, the defense of tortoises increased again. The pinnacle of demonic beasts was divine beasts, so their defense was naturally even more shocking. Zhonghai was born with a shred of the bloodline of the ancient divine beast, the black tortoise, which manifested in his defense. The area on his back was known as the god's domain, because only immortals could break it. On the stage, all the spectators were dumbfounded. Even many elites of the Mountain River tier and Sun Moon tier couldn't believe it. Ling Han was clearly only in the Shattering Void tier. But how could his battle prowess be so powerful? On the high stage, the important figures of the J-Drop and Eternity Sky Majestic Empire even tried to sense if Ling Han had borrowed power of the nation, but to their disappointment, there were no signs of external power on Ling Han, and the totem of the empire, the Nine Peaks, didn't have Ling Han's name. Without a name on the totem, one couldn't draw power of the nation. This was a principle that everyone knew. His own battle prowess could be so powerful? This surprised many important figures. Because the Shattering Void tier hadn't crossed into the immortal level, the influence wasn't too great. Even a genius only needed to reach 20 stars of battle prowess, and there was no need to fight to the death at this step. After all, the path of martial art was too long. Moreover, even if you cultivated the Shattering Void tier to perfection, how many stars of surpassing ability could you increase? I can still cultivate to perfection in the Mountain River tier and Sun Moon tier. So wouldn't the increase in battle prowess be even stronger? Precisely because it was too difficult to surpass one's cultivation level in the immortal level. Pursuing cultivation level was the way of the king. Peng Zhonghai fell off the stage, releasing a shrill scream. This tortoise shell was a part of his body, and now that it was forcefully shattered, it naturally caused him great pain. However, his previous victory was too despicable, so now that he was in such a miserable state, everyone instead felt a kind of satisfaction, feeling that their hatred had been vented. The rankings have been decided. In this competition among the three empires, the Chaotic Majestic Empire is first, the J-Drop Majestic Empire is second, and the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire is third. The ninth king's voice rang out on the high platform, announcing the final results. Ling Han, Yi Changyun, and the rest of the 10 contestants were all rewarded with 100 true origin stones each. This was not a small amount of wealth, and it could be said to be a heavy reward for just one battle. Ling Han was just about to leave with the left minister when a palace maid caught up to them. She first curtsied, then said, "By His Imperial Majesty's orders, Ling Han is summoned for an audience." Ministers was slightly taken aback and quickly replied respectfully, "Yes." Meanwhile, Xiang Chengyun was about to go mad with jealousy. This lowly commoner of a small world had actually been summoned by the Empress. What kind of luck was that? Even he had only managed to catch a glimpse of the Empress from afar because he was following the left minister. This was his pride, but now? This shattering void-tier brat was actually able to come into close contact with the Empress, and instantly trampled his pride onto the ground. He was filled with hatred. Why had he brought Ling Han back in the first place? It would have been better to just directly kill him, and casually install a puppet emperor. But now he could only feel regret, and did not dare to do anything. The person that the Empress wanted to see, did you dare to stop her? Ling Han followed the palace maid, and walked into the depths of the imperial palace. It was incredibly quiet here. Aside from the patrolling guards, there was no one else. Of course, the guards were all female, and they were all in teams of 10, led by an elite in the consummate level of the mountain river tier. The team members were also in the mountain river tier. However, after that, the palace maid led Ling Han to the entrance of a side palace hall. It was completely forged from pink crystal, and looked like a beautiful gemstone. "Reporting to your majesty, I have brought Ling Han," the palace maid said as she knelt at the entrance. "Announce." A dignified voice was heard from inside. Yet there was an incredible charm hidden within. It was as sweet as honey, making one feel incredibly comfortable just by hearing it. The palace maid nodded at Ling Han, and walked into the palace hall. Ling Han followed in as well. He acutely discovered that there was an imperial guard hidden behind every thick stone pillar that was 3 meters wide. Their auras were unfathomable, or at least they were not ones that he could detect clearly. There were a total of 18 such pillars, and they extended all the way to the bottom of the palace hall. There was an imperial throne there, and a woman dressed in a dragon robe was seated high on it. However, there was a divine light flickering on her body, and her specific appearance could not be seen clearly. However, even if it was incredibly hazy, there was a kind of charm that reached straight to the bone, and could melt one's heart. The reputation of the greatest beauty in the world was well deserved. She merely sat there, and there was an irresistible charm. Ling Han sighed, but had no choice but to kneel on one knee, and said, "Ling Han pays his respects to your majesty." This was an elite at the peak stage of the consummate level of the heavenly body tier, and she herself was possibly a 5-star genius. Added with the power of the nation, if not the eternal river tier, at least in the heavenly body tier, she should be invincible. Towards this kind of elite, it was only right to be respectful. Empress Luanxing's eyes swept over him, and Ling Han suddenly felt as if he had been seen through from inside out. It was as if he could not hide any secrets in front of her. "Coming from a small world by opening the sky, it has not been easy for you," she said with a sliver of praise. Instantly, Ling Han felt as if his blood had rushed to his head, but he immediately felt a chill in his heart. Why was it that she had only praised him, and he felt an urge to die for her? The charm of this empress was too frightening. She had obviously not used any cultivation technique, and only a single sentence, and added with the fact that her own appearance, bearing, and even appearance were all hazy, she had already made him so intoxicated. No wonder even the 2 emperors of the heavenly body tier were enchanted by her. Indeed, this kind of charm was really too hard to resist. "Thank you for your praise, your majesty," Ling Han said solemnly. His eyes were lowered, and he did not dare to take another look. This empress was a source of calamity, and her charm was much greater than Shui Yinyu's and Zhu Xian'er's. At least as far as Ling Han knew, the only one that could rival or even surpass her in terms of bearing was that former imperial empress of the Rock Palace. However, the temperament of these 2 women was completely different. Though the one from the Rock Palace had a gentle tone, she was elegant and distant, causing others to only feel reverence, and not dare to have any wild thoughts. But though the tone of this empress in front of him was clear and cold, it was like a sweet poison, making one unable to resist even if they wanted to. They were willing to be like moths flying into a flame, and would not regret it even if they died. This should also be related to the cultivation technique that this empress cultivated. Otherwise, it would definitely be impossible for her to be so enchanting and seductive. Ling Han did not think that with his current cultivation level, he would be able to resist the charm of this empress for long. Thus, it was better not to act rashly, lest his mind and spirit sink into oblivion, unable to free himself. You have turned the tide for our empire, and won 1,000 slots to enter into the heavenly sea mystery realm. Thus, I will make an exception, and grant you a slot to enter, Empress Luanxing said. Thank you, Your Majesty. This reward was within Ling Han's expectations. Furthermore, would such a powerful figure like the Empress specially summon him just to personally announce such news? Thinking about it, the battle prowess that he had displayed was too astonishing, and that was why Empress Luanxing wanted to observe him at a close distance. Chapter 943. Ling Han was confident, but he definitely wasn't arrogant. After escaping from the encirclement, Ling Han stopped and waited for the old ginseng and rabbit to arrive. When they arrived, Ling Han asked Rabbit, "Do you want to go to a good place?" "What good place?" Rabbit asked. He had never entered into the Black Tower before. Ling Han laughed and first tossed the old ginseng into the Black Tower. Then, he grabbed Rabbit and entered with him. What is this place?" Rabbit was stunned to the extreme. A spatial god tool was something that he didn't even dare to think about. Here, go there and cultivate. Ling Han tossed him under the reincarnation tree. He couldn't be bothered to explain, so he had the old ginseng accompany him. After a short while, he heard Rabbit making a big fuss. He was really stunned. If he could comprehend under this divine tree, wouldn't he have a chance to advance to the Genesis tier? Ling Han chuckled and called Small Tower over. He asked, "Is there any way to quickly dispel the alchemical poison in my body?" Small Tower floated slightly and answered yes. Ling Han was instantly overjoyed and said, "Hurry up and tell me, what do you want to do?" If he could quickly dispel the alchemical poison in his body, he would be able to reach the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier in an extremely short period of time. Then, he would advance to the pinnacle level, and then rush to the peak stage of the pinnacle level. The fourth level of the Black Tower has already been opened, and it can provide divine flames once every 3 months to temper your body. Under the divine flames, everything inside your body will be burned to ashes, Small Tower said calmly. Ling Han's lips twitched involuntarily. Why did this sound so terrifying? However, the Black Tower could provide divine flames and temper his physique. This was something that Small Tower had already mentioned long ago. However, Small Tower did not mention this matter again after that, and he very quickly forgot about it. He probed and asked, "Then will I be in danger?" "Yes." Small Tower nodded. "If you can't endure it, you will turn into ashes." "No, you won't even be able to leave behind ashes. Instead, you will completely turn into nothingness, and I will also no longer have to endure an idiotic master like you." "Fuck you, Tsundra Tower, will you die if you don't insult me?" Ling Han thought for a moment and asked, "Why didn't you tell me this before? Do you want to die so badly?" Small Tower countered with a question first, and then said, "At first, I wanted to wait until you reached the heavenly body tier before letting you temper your divine body, and elevate your physique to another level." In truth, Small Tower was also a soft-hearted person with a sharp tongue. It had already arranged the path for Ling Han, and it should be said that it was the most beneficial direction for Ling Han's development. However, it always liked to mock Ling Han a little. Ling Han was pleasantly surprised and asked, "You mean my physique can still be elevated by another level, and reach the level of surpassing my cultivation level by 2 minor levels?" Surpassing 2 minor levels is a little exaggerated, but it will definitely be much stronger than it is now. Furthermore, the greatest effect of being tempered by divine flames is that you will have the possibility of rising from the ashes, Small Tower said. Ling Han instantly showed an expression of determination, and said, "There is no need to consider. I want to be tempered by divine flames." In the small world, his physique had surpassed his cultivation level by a whole level, so he was practically a monster of the same cultivation level. It was basically impossible for anyone to injure him, and even those who surpassed him by a whole major cultivation level would find it very difficult to do so. But in the immortal realm, his physique could only surpass one minor level, and that was not safe. In truth, as long as one's battle prowess surpassed 4 stars, then there was a possibility of injuring him, because 4 stars represented a minor level. Although 5-star geniuses were said to only exist in legends, in truth such geniuses still existed. Furthermore, Ling Han himself was such a genius, so the chances of him encountering such geniuses were also considerably high. Thus, his current physique was not really invincible among those of the same cultivation level, but it was still very, very awesome. Also, what is rising from the ashes? Ling Han asked. Cultivating the indestructible flame of life is like an immortal phoenix, rising from the ashes of extreme death, Small Tower said. A part of the indestructible heaven scroll is borrowed from the secret technique of the immortal phoenix, turning death into life, and it is a supreme secret technique. Immortal phoenix? Ling Han asked in surprise. Not a true phoenix? Compared to the immortal phoenix, what are true phoenixes? Small Tower said in a very disdainful tone. Then the indestructible heaven scroll also refers to the secret technique of some divine beast. No immortal beast? Ling Han asked curiously. The primal chaos origin beast, the 10,000 transformations tortoise, and the diamond ant are all top-notch existences in the celestial realm. They were fused into one by the heavenly venerable, and that is how they finally cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll, Small Tower said very proudly. Of course, the most important thing is that the heavenly venerable has comprehended the ultimate regulations. That is the true essence of the indestructible heaven scroll. Ling Han gave no. He had not entered into the celestial realm yet, and did not know how awesome the primal chaos origin beast and 10,000 transformations tortoise that Small Tower spoke of were. In any case, he only knew that the indestructible heaven scroll was very, very powerful, and that was enough. Come. Ling Han nodded. He desired strength, whether it was to overthrow the 5 sects, or to meet that Qi Yanji in the 2-realm prodigy gathering 3 years later. You have to think carefully. If you do not endure it, then you will completely perish, Small Tower said solemnly. With your talent, it is not impossible for you to endure the trial of the divine flame in the Sun-Moon tier. But the danger is still extremely great. And if you proceed again in the heavenly body tier, your chances of success will be much greater. Ling Han laughed and said, since you have already said that I can endure it, then I believe that I can definitely do it. Small Tower nodded and said, I will give you 3 days' time to circulate the indestructible heaven scroll again. You have to thoroughly grasp every single detail. This is the key for you to endure the tempering of the divine flame. Otherwise, only death awaits you. What comes next is your willpower. Without the resolve to overcome everything and walk to the end, you will only be burned to ashes by the divine flame. All right. Ling Han meditated under the reincarnation tree, and completely circulated the indestructible heaven scroll once. He studied every single detail, and after confirming that he had truly completed the circulation, he stood up. Moreover, 5 days had already passed, and not the 3 days that Small Tower had said. This was 5 years of comprehension. Let's begin, Ling Han said darkly. Small Tower sent Ling Han to a faraway place. There was actually a gigantic cauldron here, and it was of an ancient style. Ling Han had never seen it before. Why has a cauldron suddenly appeared? Ling Han was surprised. Small Tower, just how many things have you been hiding from me? Small Tower did not speak. Hey, I'm talking to you, Ling Han said loudly. Oh, is that so? Only now did Small Tower speak up. I didn't hear you just now. What were you talking about? Ling Han repeated his question, but Small Tower was still stupefied. So this Tsundra Tower did not want to answer him at all, and that was why it had pretended to be deaf and mute. Thinking about it, he was really naive. He actually really believed that there would be a time when a tool spirit's ears would fail to work. Go in. Small Tower shook lightly, and the cauldron opened. Immediately blazing flames soared into the skies. In comparison, Aoziun's black flames were practically child's play. Ling Han couldn't help but grit his teeth. If he threw himself into this kind of divine flames, he would definitely turn into ashes in an instant. Was this tempering or was this courting death? Remember, the only thing that can protect you is the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. You only need to continuously channel the Heaven's Scroll, and forget everything else, Small Tower said solemnly. Whether you can survive in the midst of death and rise from the ashes, this is the key. Do not ever think of going against this kind of flames. This is something that is completely impossible. Because these are not divine flames but immortal flames. Fuck. Reading on a cell phone is even more refreshing. Chapter 944. Ling Han's eyes swept over, and saw that many people were staring at him with a sneer, revealing undisguised killing intent. There were senior brothers and sisters from the West Institution, disciples of the Luo clan, and Zhao Luan's subordinates, all of whom were in the low extreme of the mountain river tier. They stared at Ling Han as if he were a sheep, filled with cruelty and ruthlessness. Ling Han didn't know so many people at first, but Lin Yu stood beside him and introduced them to him one by one, giving him an idea of who they were. The Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm didn't only have opportunities, but also endless dangers. Thus, it was very normal for some people to die inside every time, and it was impossible to find out who did it. In the Mystery Realm, it had always been the best place to settle personal grudges. If you were afraid of death, then you could only choose not to enter. Opportunities and dangers always coexisted. Ling Han looked at these people and sneered internally. Even without the Black Tower with the strength of his current physique, he was completely no weaker than level 1 godly metal, and could completely withstand the attack of someone at the peak of the low extreme of the mountain river tier. And he still had the 7 kills subduing soul technique, so it was still uncertain who would kill who. Additionally, he had already made a breakthrough in 6 techniques returned to 1, and now he only lacked time. As long as he reached 20 stars of strength, he could break through, and when he advanced into the mountain river tier, it would basically be his turn to sweep away others. He indeed didn't have an immortal level cultivation technique, but don't forget that there were mountain river stones in the Mystery Realm that could directly condense mountains and rivers, though it was extremely limited to the peak of the low extreme. However, the limit of those who entered here was only the peak of the low extreme, so in a battle of equals, who would Ling Han be afraid of? These people swept their cold gazes over, and Ling Han returned a similarly cold gaze, not the slightest bit afraid. Shui Yinyu felt a headache coming on. How could she have imagined that Ling Han was so good at stirring up trouble? Not only did he have a great enemy like Zhao Luan, he actually made a great enemy of the Western Institution and the Luo clan. She didn't know whether to be angry at him for not knowing when to back off, or admire Ling Han's courage. Li Weiwei had also pulled Ji Yuner over, and was chattering away beside Ling Han's ear, completely ignoring the fact that there was still a top elite of the low extreme division of the mountain river tier of the Northern Institution standing beside her. This caused Tang Feng's expression to be rather ugly. Tang Feng was currently 277 years old, and his cultivation level was at the peak stage of the low extreme of the mountain river tier. In the North Institution's low extreme division, he was ranked as the top elite. Merely this status alone had caused countless beautiful junior sisters to throw themselves at him, offering themselves to sleep with him. It was just that he was a man of self-discipline and did not indulge in the lust of men and women, but he would still occasionally be dissolute. He was not married, so how could he resist temptation that came knocking on his door? But this time he was entrusted by the left prime minister, and he suddenly had a great ambition. He wanted to be the son-in-law of the left minister. The journey to the Mystery Realm would take at least half a month, and at most half a year. Furthermore, there were many dangers inside, and he and Li Weiwei were a single man and a single woman. If they were to spend time together, it would not be long before they developed feelings for each other. Furthermore, women were the most vulnerable in the face of danger. When she saw his awe-inspiring appearance, she would definitely be unable to stop her heart from being moved, unable to control herself. His thoughts were very beautiful, but who would have thought that Li Weiwei would not take him seriously at all? She looked like she was ordering him around like a servant, and practically did not even look him in the eye. This caused him to feel very aggrieved. If it was said that the daughter of the left minister was naturally proud, then so be it. But Li Weiwei was actually laughing and joking around with a lowly commoner from a small world, completely unguarded, practically treating him as a friend. How could Tang Feng accept this? As the top elite of the high and mighty low extreme division, could it be that he could not even compare to a lowly commoner from a small world? Tang Feng's expression was as dark as still water. He had made up his mind that after entering into the mystery realm, he definitely had to separate from Ling Han. Though he had never entered into the Heavenly Sea mystery realm before, for the sake of his beloved daughter, the left minister had given him a jade scroll. There was incredibly detailed information regarding the Heavenly Sea mystery realm inside, so he was very confident. As the saying went, 3 women made a show. As Li Weiwei chattered incessantly, she spurred Ji Yun'er and Shui Yinyu to occasionally say a few words as well, making it completely impossible for Ling Han to get a word in edgewise. Thus he retreated to one side and began chatting with Lin Yu. "Senior brother Ling, why don't you join me later?" Lin Yu extended an invitation. "This time our Lin clan has obtained a total of 3 spots. Aside from me, the other 2 brothers are both elites in the low extreme of the mountain river tier." He had long heard of Lin Yu's righteousness, and was willing to risk his life for his friends. Just from hearing his words, he knew that it was true. He thought that Ling Han might be hunted down, and thus invited him with great hospitality. Ling Han couldn't help but smile and said, "Many thanks for junior brother Lin's hospitality, but I am still used to being alone." Lin Yu glanced at Shui Yinyu, and thought he understood. He said, "I forgot that senior brother Ling still has a beautiful and enchanting senior sister accompanying him. However, senior sister Shui has just broken through to the mountain river tier, and if she encountered an opponent in the late stage of the low extreme or even the peak stage, she might still be no match for them." Shui Yinyu was very talented in martial art, and was a 2-star genius, but how could those who could enter into the mystery realm be ordinary? Those who had advanced into the mountain river tier were at least 1-star geniuses. Thus, Shui Yinyu could only match an opponent in the middle stage of the low extreme at most, and definitely couldn't be any stronger. Ling Han patted Lin Yu's shoulder and said, "I understand. However, I will be fine." At that time, who will be the hunter, and who will be the prey is still uncertain. Feeling the powerful confidence that Ling Han exuded, Lin Yu involuntarily chose to believe him. "Ling Han." A pleasantly surprised voice was heard, and the 9th king was seen walking over quickly, holding up the hem of her dress. Her status was too high, and all the people of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire knelt before her. As she ran over, the people around her also knelt on the ground, and only stood up after she ran past like a wave. Ling Han was surprised. Why did this 9th king suddenly call for him? He hadn't finished his thought when the 9th king had already run up to him. Lin Yu hurriedly half knelt, and respectfully paid his respects. "No need, no need." The 9th king raised her hand, her beautiful face like a flower as she praised, "Ling Han is still the best, unlike the others who are like spineless cowards, immediately kneeling when they see me." Pooh! The people nearby almost spat blood when they heard this. This was reverence, okay? Her Majesty had said that seeing the 9th king was like seeing the emperor, and who dared not to pay respects to her? But Ling Han was clearly treacherous, not kneeling when seeing a king, and actually became having a backbone when seeing her. Ling Han only clasped his hands in greeting, and said, "Greetings, 9th king." There were 3 female guards following behind the 9th king, and they were all in the peak stage of the low extreme of the mountain river tier. Seeing Ling Han's lack of respect, they immediately scowled and glared at him. This king has given special permission that Ling Han does not need to kneel, the 9th king hurriedly said to prevent the 3 guards from flying into a rage. Hearing the 9th king say so, the 3 female guards could only obediently keep their mouths shut. Seeing the 9th king was like seeing the emperor. This was also applicable to them, so how could they dare to disobey? "Ling Han, this time, it's all thanks to you that big sister has praised me properly." The 9th king smiled like a flower, and drew out a pill bottle, handing it to Ling Han. "This is a Jade Sun pill, which has the effect of increasing cultivation level. About a year, right? This is my gift to you." Chapter 945. The ninth king actually gave something in public to a man? This shocked the people of the chaotic star's majestic empire so much that their eyeballs almost popped out. They found it unbelievable and unacceptable. Aside from the ninth king who had only appeared a few years ago, the other 8 kings had joined the chaotic star's majestic empire since 1,000,000 years ago, and were conferred the title of king. In reality, they didn't have the slightest bit of merit. It was all decided by the empress alone, and they were conferred the title of king. But the facts proved that the empress's judgment was indeed brilliant. After a long time, the 8 kings all advanced into the heavenly body tier. But no one knew exactly which tier they had reached. Thus, when the ninth king appeared, the citizens naturally thought that in less than a few tens of thousands of years, this lord would also become a great elite of the heavenly body tier. However, the previous 8 kings and the empress all had one similarity. They were all ruthless towards men, keeping them at arm's length. In everyone's opinion, the ninth king should be no exception. Thus, when the ninth king specially came over to deliver pills, everyone was naturally dumbfounded. They could not believe it no matter what. Ling Han took the pill bottle, smiled and said, "Thank you, ninth king." He knew that the ninth king was innocent and pure to the extreme. She didn't scheme at all, and didn't have any thoughts of love. It was completely because he helped the chaotic star's majestic empire obtain first place, causing the ninth king to be praised by the empress. She was happy and wanted to express her gratitude. It was that simple. "Alright then, don't die inside. See you later." The ninth king waved her hand and ran off again. Lin Yu's mouth was so wide open that a fist could fit inside. After a long while, he finally delivered a punch to Ling Han's chest, and said in a strange voice, "Good lad. I had not thought that you would actually take down the ninth king without making a sound. Hiss, probably no one would dare make a move against you now." The ninth king represented the empress's will. If she was good to Ling Han, who would dare to make a move against him? Ling Han only smiled, but shook his head internally. How could things be so simple? Killing people in the mystery realm, who would know who was the one who did it? Could it be that the ninth king could kill everyone? If something happened to the ninth king, perhaps the empress of the chaotic star's majestic empire would really slaughter everyone that had entered to quell her fury. However, she would definitely not do so for his sake. To put it bluntly, who does he think he is? Ling Han put away the pill bottle. The Jade Sun pill could save a warrior a year's worth of cultivation time. This was almost insignificant in the long lifespan of an immortal, but for him it was extremely useful. Perhaps after he refined this medicinal pill, he would be able to reach the limit of 20 stars of strength. Since he had nothing to do, he might as well take the medicine and refine it right here. Who dares touch me? Under the watchful eyes of so many people, Ling Han was actually the safest. Anyone who dared to make a move at this moment would be openly making an enemy out of the ninth king. Most likely, even the left and right ministers and the 7 great generals would not dare to do so. Shui Yinyu could only grimace in response. She was astonished by this man's audacity. Ling Han swallowed the pill and immediately circulated his 6 techniques, as one to absorb the medicinal power within. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth instantly rolled over, and as if it had materialized, it wrapped around Ling Han. A spirit base of 6 elements attracted the spiritual chi of 6 different elements, which turned into 6 colorful pillars of chi. Seeing these spiritual chi pillars, a considerable number of people were moved. What's so strange about it? Isn't it just attracting spiritual chi? Someone said disdainfully. It's not strange to attract the spiritual chi of 6 different elements at the same time. Even if one doesn't have a spirit base innately, it can be forged later on, and become a perfect spirit base that balances the 6 elements. But the problem is, why is this spiritual chi pillar so thick? It's very shocking. When I was in the Shattering Void tier, the spiritual chi pillar that I attracted was at most 1% as thick as this one. With this reminder, whether it was the Shattering Void tier or the Mountain River tier, they all looked shocked. No wonder this person was absolutely invincible in the Shattering Void tier. He had indeed cultivated the Shattering Void tier to an almost perfect level. TSK. He's only invincible in the Shattering Void tier. Once he advances into the Mountain River tier, he'll be trash. That's right, he only climbed to the 8th level, and is only a 4-star genius. Even a 2-star genius would only need to reach the peak stage of the low extreme to be able to suppress him. Some people said sourly, but after saying these words, even they themselves couldn't help but be speechless. He had just entered the low extreme of the mountain river tier, and already possessed battle prowess that rivaled the early stage of the medium extreme. How shocking was this? Only a 4-star genius. Did you know how many 4-star geniuses there were in the chaotic star's majestic empire? He only has the potential to become a 4-star genius. It's not certain that he can. In the end, those people tried to smooth things over. Ling Han naturally wouldn't take these idle words to heart. Under the effect of the medicinal effects, spiritual qi was like a pillar that surged madly into his body, endlessly transforming into his own origin power. His power was rapidly increasing, charging towards the limit of 20 stars. Because he had always been cultivating the 9 Dragons Tyrant body art, added with the resources of the immortal realm, he, a mere shattering void tier cultivator, naturally reached the peak stage of body arts very quickly, and was only lacking in the level of origin power. In reality, with the abundant resources of the immortal realm, it could easily send a cultivator to the level of 20 stars of shattering void tier. The difficulty was whether your body could withstand such power. Your dantian wasn't big enough, and your spiritual ocean wasn't wide enough, so how could it contain so much origin power? It would definitely be filled to the point of bursting. It was like a person who was obviously extremely wealthy, yet was sick, unable to eat delicious food, unable to touch a beautiful wife. Then what meaning was there to such wealth? Ling Han's cultivation of the 6 techniques as one had opened the final door, allowing his body to contain the limit of 20 stars of power. When he comprehended the key to this, then what was then left was only time to fill up him. Now that the 9th king had gifted him a Jade Sun pill, it just so happened to fill up this shortcoming. However, after a day, Ling Han stopped. He opened his eyes and a smile appeared on his face. Shui Yinyu was shocked. When you look at me, it actually gives me a feeling that I don't dare to meet your eyes. Ling Han laughed and teased, that's natural. Don't you know that a husband is a wife? It's natural for you to be afraid of me. Shui Yinyu glared fiercely at him, but was still very shocked. One had to know that she was in the mountain river tier, and was actually stunned by the gaze of a shattering void tier cultivator. What kind of logic was this? She was startled and felt that even breathing was a little difficult. She said, You couldn't have advanced your power to 20 stars, right? Smart, as expected of my wife, Ling Han praised. Strength 20 stars. These few words flew in Shui Yinyu's head, and she was so shocked that she forgot to refute Ling Han's teasing. She knew that Ling Han would definitely reach the power of 20 stars of shattering void tier one day, but she never thought that it would be so soon. She looked at Ling Han, filled with shock. This man might become a great achievement that everyone could only look up to. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.